Each day, this youngster is subjected to violence. Lacking a father's protection, he is at the mercy of cruel peers who assault him so severely that he can barely walk home to his mother. She provides whatever comfort and care she can, yet the cycle repeats endlessly. Eventually, a simple physical thrashing is no longer enough for his tormentors. Bring venomous spikes instead. While a massive youth pins him to the earth to prevent escape, another pierces him. The toxin immediately begins to circulate through his veins. His vision turns crimson as blood pools in his eyes, and they abandon him to perish in the wilderness. He loses all sense of time, lying paralyzed even as a heavy rain begins to fall. Sensing his end is near, the thought of his mother prevents him from surrendering. Without him, she would be defenseless. He offers a humble prayer for the strength to safeguard her and lead a quiet life. Suddenly, amidst a thunderclap, a blade descends before him. Peculiarly, the weapon feels entirely recognizable. Summoning his remaining energy, he clutches the hilt. A surge of recollections fills his mind. This very sword belonged to him in a previous life, where he trained with it for a full century. He had perfected every technique, reaching the status of a divine swordsman. Now that his memories and former abilities have returned, he can finally pursue a peaceful existence. Following morning, his mother hurries toward him, questioning his departure after he arrived home so badly injured. Undeterred, he tells her not to fret and guarantees that he will remain safe. With a grin and a wave, he vows to return. Meanwhile, leaning against a tree, the aggressor wonders if Yeon Myung is intentionally avoiding them today. A companion suggests that after the brutal thrashing they gave him, he likely wants to hide his pathetic condition from his mother. The leader chuckles, declaring that should he appear, they will give him another severe lashing. Otherwise, they'll round up the children to jeer at him. At that moment, a different tormentor looks back, declaring the protagonist's arrival. Rae-young leaps from the branch, pointing out his tardiness and admitting she doubted his appearance. The protagonist confronts the group with a stoic look. The male aggressor walks up, remarking that Yeon-myung surely suffered, yet questioning his lack of visible injuries. He carries himself with supreme self-assurance, insisting that such things cannot wound him. Moon Chan and his cohorts are stunned by his sheer gall. John-gil grinds his teeth and implies the boy requires a warm poultice. He begins rotating his wrist, preparing for combat. To everyone's shock, the youth expresses gratitude to John-gil. Upon hearing her name, she interrupts him with a clap, her face flushing slightly. She wonders what prompted this change and why Yeon-myung is addressing them so personally today. Tone quickly darkens as she asks if the previous day's toxin was insufficient and suggests increasing the amount twofold. Enraged, John-gil bellows, demanding to know why the protagonist is ignoring the opponent right before him. He lifts his fist to strike, but instantly, Yeon-myung grabs his face and drives him into the dirt. The surrounding bullies are left speechless. Due to the sheer strength, the collision leaves a deep hole in the ground. They can't understand how John-gil was floored by just one move. To Rae-young's knowledge, Yeon-myung was never taught any fighting techniques. Moon-chan is equally troubled, confessing he has no idea what just occurred. The youth maintains that he is just as capable as they are. He then points out their involvement in the clan leadership contest, questioning if they truly plan to compete with such mediocre abilities. The protagonist begins approaching them, radiating an intensity so powerful it unnerves the thugs. Gritting his teeth, Moon-chan reflects on how Yeon-myung appears to have transformed into a new man since yesterday. Still, he tries to steady his nerves, rationalizing that John-gil was simply taken by surprise. He assures himself that following years of practice, they won't be defeated by a person of his caliber. Letting out a yell, Moon-chan issues a war cry, jumping high with his blade and lunging toward the main character. Yet while still airborne, our lead grabs his wrist and shatters the weapon. He remarks that if this represents the quality of the contestants, the race for the clan's headship is essentially over. At last, the young man wrenches Moon-chan's arm, finishing him off. The Hall of Concealed Venom, formerly the leader's residence, currently functions as the elders' meeting chamber. One senior member speaks to the group. Now that everyone is present, the proceedings can begin. He mentions that the list of candidates for the next young clan leader contest seems to be set. Consequently, he suggests reaching a definitive verdict on whether Tang Yeon-myung, the Poison Phoenix's offspring, should take part, even though Yeon-myung hasn't formally declared his entry. It's common knowledge that the other youths have frequently humiliated him. Furthermore, he lacks any notable accomplishments. Thus, he believes there will be no complaints about barring him. But another attendee contends that disqualifying the protagonist, who is the former leader's direct descendant, could cast doubt on the validity of subsequent tournaments. The senior official recognizes the point, but maintains that it would be more detrimental if an incompetent individual degraded the contest's standards. Despite his lineage, the hero is currently viewed as nothing more than a liability. Suddenly, the door bursts open, startling the room. The protagonist walks in, pulling Tang Young Ryung along. The senior members insist on an explanation for his behavior. Yan Myung displays the wounded Ra Young, whose bloodshot eye unmistakably indicates poisoning. Challenged to justify himself, he admits he knows exactly what he's doing. Those present are appalled by this shocking and unique spectacle. Youth states his position plainly. Having suffered under the Tang clan's thumb for years, he refuses to tolerate any more mistreatment. One of the men yells back, questioning how he could possibly injure a tournament contestant. Someone else emphasizes that attacking a rival is a grave offense. However, the young man maintains he is well versed in the clan's laws. He then asks if there is any issue with a confrontation occurring between two entrants. Senior leader seeks confirmation, inquiring if he really means to compete. Yeon Myung retorts that his current conduct serves as sufficient evidence. He suggests they inspect the courtyard where his former tormentors Moonshin and John Gill are sprawled out. He has merely upheld the clan's decree, returning favors. Twice over and vengeance 10 times as hard. A hush falls over the room following his words. The elder grips his hand tightly in fury, yet he ultimately concedes that Yeon Myung has demonstrated his capability. Various members object, claiming he is manipulating the regulations and putting people at risk. Nevertheless, the senior official signals for quiet with a raised hand. He announces that Yeon Myung is permitted to enter, as they cannot bar a legitimate candidate. Even so, he cautions that he expects Yan Myung's prowess to equal his arrogance, because failing to secure the title of young clan leader will result in severe consequences for today's events. Afterward, Yeon Myung recounts the entire ordeal to his mother. Filled with anxiety, she questions his actions, yet he justifies them as essential. His firm voice makes her understand that this wasn't a mere moment of anger. Considering his name, Myung, which signifies longevity, she admits she viewed him as a mere youth, but now she perceives a formidable figure before her. Upon this realization, she drops to her knees and grasps his hand, vowing never to ask about the origin of his skill. She seeks only one answer: does he truly believe he can win the contest? The young man grins, pointing out his lineage as the Poison Phoenix's offspring. Moved by his statement, she pulls him into an embrace, telling him how proud she is. While held by his mother, the hero finds comfort in her warmth. This strengthens his resolve to safeguard his peaceful existence and destroy any threats to it. 30 days pass and Tang Jihi strolls through the garden with the Dark King's supreme commander, Tang Jihui. He contemplates maintaining the status quo, noting the tournament's serious nature. She beams, advising him to give Yeon Myung space, certain that the boy has a plan. Jiokui agrees, noting that the youth possesses a level of grit and bravery far beyond his years. She expresses gratitude for his guardianship of Yeon Myung. Jiokui concedes his intervention was required, yet he questions if it is wise for the lad to avoid specialized training. At the same time, our hero is in his quarters, deep in meditation. He ponders his regimen, consuming healthy food, resting properly, and employing inner techniques to realign his distorted energy channel. For a person who has already reached the level of a sword master, merely refining power and technique is currently redundant. Instead, he focuses on the necessity of strengthening his physical foundation first. Resting his palm on the earth, he reflects that at the young age of 12, his energy channels aren't significantly obstructed. Balancing on a single finger, Yeon Myung decides that as his power grows, his evolution will happen spontaneously. The day of the tournament finally arrives. Our protagonist excitedly tells his mother he's heading out, and she warns him to stay safe. Tang Jokui also bids his sister farewell, and then the two of them depart. Behind, his mother gazes at them, wishing Tang Longrian could witness how much their son has matured. At the Dark King Hall, numerous contestants gather. Our hero is busy snacking, noting their early arrival. At that moment, a pack of youths approaches, identifying him as the Poison Phoenix's child who thrashed Moonshin. Nevertheless, they brush it off as a lie, asserting he was incapable of mastering combat skill. Consequently, they resolve to teach him a lesson in manners. Feeling pestered, our hero flings a rice cake at the leader's face. The force of the blow sends the boy sprawling. His companions cry out, questioning if a concealed projectile was used. Shortly after, one of them notices it's merely a partially consumed rice cake and marvels at its impact. Yeon Myung jeers at them, daring the group to flee even though they are tournament contestants. Fuming with rage, the entire group lunges at him, yet the boy remains unmoved. From the opposite direction, Tang Jokyui nears and spots a figure launched into the sky. He rushes over, only to find the whole gang defeated on the floor. Myung perches atop the heap of bodies while munching on a rice ball. He greets Jo Kyui, mentioning that he was starting to feel restless. With a grin, he warns the leader not to complain since they initiated the fight. Jo Kyui can only sigh in disbelief. Within the assembly, voices are raised against the Grand Elder. They are baffled that such a high number of casualties could be ignored right before the contest. Given the circumstances, Elder Seokyung proposes an amendment to the regulation. Contestants assemble in a queue outdoors. A young woman quietly inquires about the tournament structure, prompting a peer to describe the routine. Several years of preparation leading up to individual combat. Tang Jokyui steps onto the platform and demands quiet. Identifying himself as the supervisor, he outlines the sequence, a 3-year training period preceding the primary contest. Unexpectedly, the elder appears and declares the event will follow a goo poison format, leaving the crowd stunned. They understand this entails trapping lethal toxins in a vessel to battle until a single, superior one prevails. It is a free-for-all where just one person emerges. The elder clarifies that because tragic events led to many withdrawals, traditional head-to-head matches are no longer feasible. Gyokyui immediately understands that our protagonist is the reason for this shift. The elder claims the rules were altered to avoid any more mishaps. Consequently, the pupils are visibly incensed, pointing the finger at Yeonmyeong. The elder emphasizes that this role is crucial for the Tang clan's destiny. He orders them to engage, endure, and triumph, swearing the winner shall inherit all. Our hero observes his rivals. With a grin, realizing that only a single survivor will remain, he reflects that the task appears quite simple. Under the cover of darkness, a clandestine gathering occurs at the Dark Moon Sword Sect's base, located in the Sichuan region's Black Death Alliance zone. A man expresses gratitude for their attendance before urging them to pay close attention to the Tang family's latest maneuvers. Those seated around the table ask if he means the young clan. Leadership tournament. A third individual validates this, noting that informants signaled the start of the contest days ago. As a result, the candidates, youths capable of heading the Tang household, have departed via coaches. They remark on the Tang clan's current vulnerability, noting that Yu Gil-jun, the Black Death Alliance's chief, could annihilate them at any moment. Yet, the speaker notes that Yu Gil-jun is holding back for the time being because they remain somewhat beneficial. He highlights that these youths are the clan's successors. Thus, any misfortune they face would result in an irreversible setback for the Tang family. The subordinates side with the Elder of the Dark Moon Sword Sect, but a follower advises caution, questioning when their assault should begin. The Elder's decision to remain idle for the moment startles the rest of the group. He maintains that trailing the wagons and eliminating the defenseless fledglings immediately would be too effortless, lacking the desired impact. He notes that the tournament lasts for 4 years, inviting them to picture the catastrophe if these well-trained youths are killed at the height of the event. Grinning, the masked figure smirks, agreeing that this would be a truly lethal strike. Someone else proposes that the Jagal or Moyang families should take the lead. Makinhu, the Dark Moon Elder, concurs, resolving to simply follow the wagons and launch their offensive in 4 years' time. The pursuit is already organized, and a subtle seed has been sown to ensure the Tang family falls completely into their grasp. At the same time, at the mountain site where the contest is held, the mentor guides the group. He states that while the regulations have shifted, the timetable is still the same. Thus, entrants will be summoned by their assigned numbers, rather than names. As they are the 7th group, the mentor looks around and sees that one person is gone. Glancing behind, he questions trainee 28, our protagonist, about his slow pace. Yan Myung offers an apology for trailing, explaining he was briefly lost in thought. Despite the excuse, the teacher rebukes him and cautions against losing ground. While moving, the young man is puzzled that their guide hasn't noticed anything. He senses someone following them, convinced they are being shadowed. Their progress halts abruptly at a massive precipice. A voice calls out from the rock asking for the 7th group's code. The teacher replies, "Hidden poison's venomous monarch." A glow appears, verifying the phrase. Immediately, a man carrying a fan emerges from the stone wall. He identifies himself as Jagal Changshin, announcing his role as an aide for the contest. The pupils recognize that the Jajal clan was once a member of the 5 noble houses, renowned for their mastery of arrays until the Heaven's Brilliance Demon Lord's assault led to their ruin. Entering the mountain, the party is stunned by the breathtaking scenery concealed inside. Jajal Changshin clarifies that these barriers prevent intruders from disrupting the event. Yuri is understandably awestruck. identifying the legendary array methods of the Jiggle lineage. AI Jun shares the sentiment, observing that time and location become indistinguishable within the barrier. As the team begins to traverse a barrier of electricity, Mirio glances sideways at the boy. She finds his lack of focus and odd behavior suspicious, recalling he acted similarly during their journey in the coach. Calling the trip in the carriage, the teacher had instructed the youths to present themselves. Yuri watched our protagonist, remarking that his recent brawl was common knowledge. AI Jun mentioned that he's gained quite a reputation for the way he handled Tang Young Rayon. Yuri considers our hero's behavior courageous, yet she cautions that his well-being could be at risk throughout the four-year tournament, especially since Tang Young Ryung's great-grandfather holds a position as one of the three elders. Yan Mayung then cut in, questioning if they were holding him responsible for the contest devolving into a venomous showdown. Mirio wouldn't drop the subject. Observing his arrogant expression, she doubted he showed any signs of genuine regret. Rather than offering an apology, he simply grinned, which only served to further irritate Mirio. Returning to the current moment, Mirio keeps an eye on him as they trek along. She swears that she won't overlook any further trouble he might cause. All of a sudden, she collides with Yuri when the entire group comes to a halt. Yuri and AI John are both struck with fear upon seeing that their leader, Jaggle Changshin, has vanished. Unexpectedly, our protagonist steps ahead and attempts to feel the void in front of him. Mirio questions his behavior, finding his composed demeanor quite peculiar. In the meantime, Jaggle Changshin continues down the path by himself. He imagines the youngsters are currently in a state of terror within the barrier. He is certain that within the Jiggle clan's 7-lock Phantom Dome array, one cannot get out unless the creator allows it. He remembers the elder's vow to provide twice the resources to his family if he gets rid of number 28. However, much to Jaggle Changshin's shock, the space behind him begins to fracture. Through the opening, the four youths emerge. Changshin loses his cool entirely, yelling out of bewilderment. Our lead asks Instructor Jaggle about the potential outcome if he were to desert them. Stunned into silence, Changshin hastily fabricates an excuse about a blunder. Yuri looks at our hero, inquiring about his method, and he merely replies that he sliced through. In Mirio's view, such matters are currently irrelevant. He urges the group to keep a close eye on Instructor Jaggle Changshin. However, upon turning around, Changshin has vanished once more. They cry out that he's gone, prompting a heavy sigh from our protagonist. As he retreats, the instructor feels humiliated by the fact that he is running away within his own array. Soon spots a bright glow, identifying it as the path to the practice field. He exits the barrier, believing he has done enough. Suddenly, a voice calls out to him. It belongs to Tang Wanjin, the overseer of Group 7. Terrified, the instructor concocts a lie, claiming that Group 7 won't be taking part because they failed to appear. At that moment, however, the space behind them begins to fracture. Our protagonist thrusts his blade into the rift from within the barrier, causing it to splinter like shards of glass. Jaggle Changshin stares in shock as his clan's ultimate secret art, 7-lock Phantom Dome, is effortlessly destroyed. At last, Yeonmyoung fixes his gaze on the instructor, his eyes radiating a crimson light. A stunned Mirio questions how our hero managed to demolish the array using only a small dagger, baffled by the feat. Our lead clarifies that the formation wasn't actually destroyed. Rather, he merely created an opening. He cautions that it will seal up shortly, urging them to exit quickly. Up ahead, the supervisor bellows, inquiring if they are the members of Group 7. Pupils acknowledge the fact but inquire about his identity, only to have one spot the Tang clan's emblem on his headwear. The overseer mentions his concern regarding a potential assault, echoing the teacher's claims. Upon hearing this, Yeonmyoung looks at the teacher and mockingly echoes the term attack. The teacher is visibly trembling in terror. The grin, the main character, implies the teacher likely mistook their situation for being strayed. He expresses gratitude for the marked doorway, which made their arrival effortless. Yan Mayung currently surmises that the teacher is following instructions from the Tang clan senior. He chooses to ignore it for the moment as it's merely a hunch, yet he swears that should he discover, following the tournament, that the teacher collaborated with the seniors, he will utterly annihilate the Jiggle clan. The teacher reacts with a nervous, quivering chuckle, offers an apology for his error, and states he'll inspect the damaged array. He then beats a hasty retreat. Subsequently, the overseer greets them upon their secure arrival, expressing regret for the commotion and the absence of a guide. He identifies himself as Tang Won-jin from the Bangui Brigade, tasked with overseeing their drills throughout the contest. Serving the previous young head of the Tang clan, the Bangui Brigade is a specialized military unit. Since every soldier possesses the strength of a Grand Master, they rank among the Tang family's most formidable elite troops. Miria observes Yeonmyeong's unrefined behavior with annoyance, particularly as she recalls that his own mother was the former young leader of the clan, known as the Poison Phoenix. Once he finishes his crude gesture, the youth questions why Tang Wanjin isn't stationed at the primary Tang residence. The overseer clarifies that they engaged in a frantic struggle to safeguard their lord years prior. Poison Phoenix challenged the heavenly radiant demon lord but was wiped out. Since they failed to protect their master, they are regarded as nothing but sinners. The students gaze at the term sinner with apprehension. However, the proctor continues to outline the regulations. The first year is for independent study, allowing them to train as they wish, and they will be granted martial arts scrolls or instruction based on their achievements. A pupil inquires about the Tang family's fabled technique, the 10,000 heavenly flower rain, which was lost during the battle against the demon lord. The supervisor confirms that the 10,000 heavenly flower rain is guaranteed to whoever becomes the young clan head. Though it is currently partial, the elders have handed down the core principles of the art. As a result, the youth contemplates the 10,000 heavenly flower rain. He understands it is a method that controls numerous concealed projectiles like a torrential downpour. It is similar to sword manipulation skills, leading him to wonder if he can imitate it. The instructor mentions he has spoken too much and tells them to focus strictly on their training. He also clarifies that they are free to practice together or individually. Mirio asks about their sleeping arrangements, to which the proctor responds that they will sleep outdoors to learn forest survival. Naturally, this frightens the children. The supervisor asks if they expected to train in cozy beds, claiming that comfort does not foster strength. Therefore, prioritizing adaptation to severe environments is key. He raises his hand and instructs them to begin practicing according to their own discretion. While the three children are shivering with dread, our hero remains calm. Yan Myung cuts in and asks if it is all right to live in comfort and rest in a quality bed, provided he meets the criteria. Proper nourishment is vital for developing children after all. Furthermore, he believes that getting used to the woods is pointless. The other children grit their teeth once more, stunned by his conceit. The overseer pauses to reflect, viewing the youth as the embodiment of hubris. Despite the anger of the other pupils, the instructor accepts the proposal. He stipulates that if the protagonist succeeds in a trial, he may reside in the estate within the barrier. However, should he fall short, he must face the consequences. Yeonmyeong consents. The official then declares a straightforward challenge. Squad members will encircle him and launch concealed projectiles. Setting shifts abruptly. The young man is positioned at the center, while men lie in wait all around him, on the forest floor, perched in branches and atop the precipice. The examiner outlines the trial's rules. If the lead character can deflect or evade the incoming strikes within a 5-step radius while his eyes are covered, he will be successful. As he fastens the cloth over his eyes, the individual on the ridge readies his knives. Every stationed guard becomes vigilant. The remaining pupils question the feasibility of the task, observing that everyone is currently motionless. Mirio speculates whether the delay is meant to heighten the tension. All at once, projectiles are hurled at the protagonist from every angle. Yeonmyeong remains perfectly stationary, mentally tracking every blade flying toward him. He considers the onslaught slightly excessive, yet still manageable. Drawing his blade, he employs a method known as adhesion. As a result, he parries every strike using his dagger. Adhesion is a martial arts concept frequently neglected, categorized alongside elements such as intensity, mass, velocity, and transformation. The particular discipline of ascension involves fracturing, dispersing, adhesion, severing, and keenness. These concepts are simple for Yeonmyeong, having mastered them via swordsmanship in his past incarnation. However, for those lacking such insight, it's a revelation. The protagonist parries every incoming edge. Not a single one makes contact. Truly, they don't even get within a hair's breadth of him. The crowd is stunned and the proctor is baffled by the display. With a solitary motion, every concealed projectile was warded off, drawn in, and rendered harmless. The pupils question what they just saw, finding it hard to credit that a lone strike halted every weapon. Subsequently, our lead removes his eye covering and inquires if he succeeded. Trainees observe the examiner, who is lost in reflection, until their cries snap him back to reality. Clearing his throat, the official confirms the youth's success. He grants him permission to head to the estate for some relaxation. While Yeonmyeong twirls his blade, the overseer contemplates that a beast has likely emerged. Mirio, on the other hand, is irritated and envious, prompting her to yell, demanding to know if he intends to abandon his comrades to bask in luxury by himself. The boy pays her no mind. Grinning as he gazes forward, he muses whether the residence provides a better menu as well. Of course, the other pupils are even more incensed by his mockery. The instructor reflects that it's fortunate the rest of the group remains driven. Yet he suspects the struggle for the head of the family is settled before the contest has even started. This child might be the chosen one. Abruptly, our hero halts his stride, pivots, and prompts his teacher to ensure meat is served at every sitting, as he requires proper nutrition for his development. Sometime later, a wolf pack swarms the remains of a deceased bear, ready to gorge themselves. Yet the second they bite into the flesh, they start hacking uncontrollably, spitting up blood as they collapse with froth at their lips. In that instant, a student springs out from the darkness to finish off. Once the wolves are dispatched, the group takes refuge in a cavern for the night. Yuri is thrilled that her homemade paralyzing toxin was a total success. Yijin concurs, noting that if she maintains this standard, they will be fine. Mirio also offers praise, remarking that his ability to craft poisons is quite remarkable. His rainstorm method is far from ordinary. The trio huddles around the flames with somber expressions, waiting for the food to cook. During the wait, Yuri muses that 4 months have already passed. She recalls how on day 1, they were fixated on fleeing and had their initial run-in with a bear. She grieves over the fact that they couldn't even locate game at the start, forcing them to survive on roots while sobbing. Eventually, however, they manage to hunt successfully and find a home. Suddenly, Yijin speculates whether Yan Myong is living a life of luxury by now. Just hearing Yan Myong's name infuriates Mirio, who yells at him to stop mentioning that guy. Yijin explains he's simply curious. She vows that once he reaches the estate, he will face the consequences. Inwardly, though, Yijin has other thoughts. Considering the prowess Yan Myong displayed previously, he wonders how much more powerful he has become. He has kept up his training this whole time. Right then, Mirio realizes something is off and asks where their food went. They look toward the fire, only to see the spits are bare. As it turns out, Yuri has already finished off the entire portion. She lets out a loud burp of satisfaction and, seeing their murderous looks, asks why they are staring at her that way. Predictably, Mirio and Ajun lose their tempers, shouting at her for posing such a self-evident query. In the meantime, within the 7-lock Phantom Dome fortress on Gangdong Mountain, Yan Meiyang is positioned in the middle of the practice field, surrounded by scores of combatants with weapons drawn. Instructor Wu Jin signals the start. Instantly, a pair of fighters charge him from opposing directions. Yeonmyeong delivers a rapid kick to one, yet during that brief diversion, the remaining soldiers strike with their arms. Nevertheless, he perceives every tiny motion. He disappears before their steel can touch him, leaving the fighters stunned. Searching for him in bewilderment until Yeonmyeong abruptly manifests overhead, rings adorning each of his fingers. He announces that he will now trial his latest skill. With his hands crossed and eyes radiating a green light, Yan Meiyang hurls all 10 rings toward the ground as the combatants prepare for impact. The fighters are baffled by the dispersed items, but the rings suddenly shift while airborne. They evolve into razor-sharp rotating discs. Striking before a response is possible, Yeonmyeong orders them to rotate, causing the rings to follow a frantic, erratic path in the whirling line frenzy dance. Instructor Woojin looks on, stunned, noticing that Yan Myung incapacitated the skilled disciples in a heartbeat. Furthermore, he managed the intensity of the broad-scale strike to merely graze their skin, preventing any lethal wounds. Woojin walks over, gripping a ring, and inquires if Yanmian developed this method on his own. Yanmian agrees, identifying the maneuver as the whirling line frenzy dance. Woojin is struck with admiration. Escaping would be nearly impossible for anyone trapped within that range. Furthermore, maintaining such a feat must drain a tremendous amount of inner power, making his success quite baffling. In response, Yeonmyeong mentions that he previously requested the manual for ocular techniques. Woojin nods, thinking back to the piercing sky eyes and the current flow eyes. He recalls, suggesting the piercing sky eyes because the alternative was known to be flawed. However, Yanmyeong discloses that he has fully mastered the current flow eyes. Naturally, Woojin is flabbergasted. He reflects that while the current flow eyes is among the Tang clan's most ancient secrets, this outsider has somehow gained total command over it. Mayung clarifies that even though the core was absent, he realized the skill was part of a transcendental martial art. By employing the current flow eyes, he can perceive the ideal path, allowing him to fire his weapons with perfect accuracy while using very little internal energy. At this stage, nothing can shock Woojin anymore. He acknowledges that Yeonmyoung managed to reconstruct the missing fundamentals through his own independent study. Shifting the topic, Woojin notes that in 2 months, his young teammates will arrive to face the same trial. He mentions that they have already demonstrated the necessary talent to take the test. Yet they insisted on returning only after further honing their skill. Yan Meiyang grins, finding the situation quite intriguing. He is genuinely eager to see the level of strength his friends have attained. As he watches him depart, Woojin wonders if Yeonmyoung was actually feeling anxious about his comrades. Meanwhile, Yeonmyoung gazes at the sky, reflecting on the threads of destiny. His former life, his only tie was to his teacher, the sword ghost. Now, despite his history and his choices, new bonds are starting to develop, forming what one might call a typical life. For this reason, he reflects on his comrades, discovering that he oddly wishes to reunite with them. Inside the grotto, the messy brawl carries on as Mirio and Ajan reprimand Yuri for eating every bit of meat. At last, 2 months having passed, the crew is ready to move to the subsequent stage. They are brimming with excitement while approaching the stronghold. Miria contemplates how they were just beginners when training began, but they have now reached a completely different tier of power. Actually, Aijang admits he is looking forward to encountering Yeon Meiyang once more. As Yuri mutters that she'll crack his skull open, from behind, the remaining trainees observe the trio, whispering about how intimidating they seem. The group then enters the main room of the Gangdong Mountain Fortress. Mirio bellows at full volume, demanding that Tang Yeon Meiyang show himself this instant. Nevertheless, the hall remains hushed. Mirio looks about, questioning the stillness and chuckles, asking if he fled out of fear. Yuri clicks her tongue, remarking that it's a pity since she wanted to smash his head. Mirio spins around, yelling once more that he's been too quiet, but she suddenly goes rigid. Yeonmyoung is standing directly behind her, casually resting a hand on her shoulder. He whispers that he was lying in wait to give them a surprise. He then smirks, inquiring what exactly they were going to do to his head, calling them darling. The 3 students look on in shock as our protagonist continues. He asks if they were discussing breaking his head before, and playfully wonders if they'd like to see the results of their practice, or if he should strike first. In response, Mirio and Yuri both cry out that they were only kidding. Mirio bites her lip, lost in her thoughts. She realizes they didn't even sense him until they turned around, and consequently, she wonders if this is the gap in their abilities. Despite the extensive period they spent honing their instincts within the woods, the protagonist abruptly embraces Yuri, which draws Mirio's gaze. She observes him closely, curious about his activities during this interval. That moment, she realizes Yeonmyoung's height has increased. His facial features have also shifted. The girl turns red but immediately rebukes herself, wondering why such thoughts are crossing her mind. The youth comforts her, telling her not to lose heart, as he can see they have gained significant power. Yet, he notes that their progress appears less remarkable simply because of his own presence. This comment leaves the trio looking annoyed, as they realize his tiresome bravado remains constant. Simultaneously, within the hall's circular table, Instructor Jagal Changshin summons the group to assemble. He inquires if any remarkable individuals were in their units, leading one teacher to highlight Candidate 2 for her exceptional advancement relative to the rest. He clarifies that, instead of a desire for power, she appears to be fueled by a deep-seated loathing for a specific person, drawing strength from that malice. A different mentor mentions trainee number 10, who completed the combat trial within a mere 30 days. In the meantime, Changshin reflects privately, acknowledging that numbers 2 and 10 are impressive. Still, compared to number 28, Yeonmyoung, they appear quite average. He remembers his astonishment when the lead character disrupted the array and exhibited techniques that would challenge even seasoned experts. Even so, Changshin concludes that enlisting number 28 is far too dangerous, as the youth appears to have detected his manipulation. When questioned about his well-being by a colleague, Changshin deceives them, asserting that no one in his section was particularly gifted. He chooses to leave number 28 out of the conversation, as their goal is to find a manageable pawn. Rather, he proposes bringing number 2 into the fold. His intention is to set her up with his nephew, noting reports that her appearance was marred by a past wound. Thus, swaying her emotions ought to be simple. Changshin details his strategy. By securing her victory and betrothing her to his nephew, the Jejeol clan will formally be recognized as the Tang leader's maternal relatives. In time, they'll absorb the Tang lineage into their primary household. He ends the discussion there. As he departs, Chung Shin reflects that number 28 is far too precious to discard. Consequently, he resolves that should the protagonist endure the contest, he'll lure him with the promise of vengeance, take him in as an heir, and grant him the title of the Jejeol family's junior patriarch. Later on within the estate, Mirio is in high spirits. Even though their drills have intensified twofold, the luxury of a solid night's rest is incomparable. Facing Yuri, she inquires whether Ijeon and Yeonmyeong visited the laboratory today. Yuri confirms this, noting that Ijeon charged inside, gnashing his teeth and swearing to commit murder. Within the facility, Ijeon grins. Displaying a small bottle, he declares this toxin to be the culmination of his entire being. Without warning, our protagonist grabs the toxic vessel and gulps it down instantly. Jun loses his cool, demanding to know why he consumed such a large amount. Labeling him a lunatic, he rattles Yeonmyeong so forcefully that the hero nearly loses consciousness. Froth begins to appear at his lips, yet our lead suddenly lets out a burp directly at Ijeon. Stunned, Ijeon collapses to the floor as our main character realizes the toxin has no effect on him. Grinning, he questions if the venom is less potent than anticipated. This brings Ijeon to the verge of tears. He yells that the substance should be dissolving his internal organs and cannot fathom why he remains unharmed. Our protagonist mocks him, hinting that perhaps his concoction is simply low quality. This predictably enrages Ijeon, who bellows, demanding to know why the hero hasn't perished yet. Beyond the entrance, Mirio and Yuri overhear the yelling and assume the plan is failing. Subsequently, our lead downs a second serving. Ijeon warns him to stop treating lethal toxins like common alcohol. Yet the hero inquires about additional servings since he feels no ill effects. Ijeon strikes his fist down in a rage, questioning if the man is resistant to all substances. Meanwhile, Yeonmyeong dabs his mouth and reflects. Understands this isn't mere immunity. Instead, it's the fundamental Tang family method known as the poison refining frenzy. He reasons that true masters of venom ought to be capable of managing any toxins they ingest, just as he thought. The substances he swallowed were converted into inner power. Consequently, up to a specific point, these toxins serve as nothing less than a restorative tonic for him. Nevertheless, he recognizes that such a condition requires profound insight. He notes that diluted venoms now provide almost no boost to his internal cultivation. Consequently, he requires more potent versions. He contemplates the upcoming threats. Yeonmyeong realizes that success isn't certain should the Black Death Alliance or the Heaven's brilliant demon lord launch an attack. Although he bears no private animosity toward the Black Death Alliance, their partitioning of Sichuan City makes them impossible to overlook. Their commander is hailed as a prodigy who dismantled 3 out of the 9 sects. Thus, to survive as a mortal, the youth must regain the power he possessed in his past incarnation. A weary Jun whispers that he wishes he could concoct the 10 legendary toxins of the Tang clan. Turning around, our protagonist inquires about his remark, prompting Ijeon to clarify that these 10 venoms represent the most formidable substances inherited from their forebears. Notes that their lethality increases with their rank, though most recipes have vanished over the ages. He points out that the 10th toxin was so powerful that even those who reached the transcendent stage were vulnerable. Yeonmyeong is stunned, reflecting that a substance capable of impacting transcendent-level experts is something truly desirable. He questions whether Ijeon can brew the 10th one, but Ijeon insists it's unfeasible since the method is gone. Our lead is disappointed because Ijeon's existing mixtures no longer have any effect on him. This enrages Ijeon, who cautions that the 10th venom is a prohibited hazard, claiming that even our protagonist would perish if he consumed it. Later that evening, the second contestant battles an assailant who is strangling her. Dark smoke billows from the man's lips as he demands to know what she did. He gasps and flames burst from his throat. She then dares him to say it again, ridiculing his expression while fire blazes from his eyes and mouth. He screams and charges at her, yet his hand shatters like brittle rock before he can make contact. He collapses to the earth and breaks into pieces. With a grin, she observes that he was incinerated in an instant. Furthermore, she is amazed by the potency of the toxin her grandfather provided, disclosing that it represents the Tang clan's 10th venom. Caressing her scarred features, she remarks that the agony from that day remains etched in her memory. She pledges once more to channel this fury and suffering. Brushing her locks aside, she shows her identity as Tang Young Rai Yang, At last, she sneers, vowing to inflict immense misery upon Yan Myung during the goo poison contest. The following morning, Tang Woojin, the overseer, speaks to the group. He mentions that a full year of instruction has concluded and clarifies that his focus, until now, has been on perfecting their combat skills. However, the true test starts this very day. He specifically declares that a captain will be chosen. Seeing the pupils' surprise, Woojin explains that they are selecting an interim head for the time being. Nevertheless, a formal representative for the goo poison competition will be voted in by the third year. He mentions that because the fight is a matter of survival, only the most exceptional candidates ought to take charge. Upon hearing this, Yuri observes that not everyone joins the goo match, while Mirio understands that those who fall behind are destined for death. He suggests the selection be determined by merit, subsequently gesturing toward Tang Yeonmyeong, number 28. Aijon concurs, claiming their peer is the top choice, prompting the overseer to inquire if anyone disagrees. No one speaks. The supervisor then summons number 28 to receive a prize. He offers a tiny box holding a medicinal ball, identifying it as the Heavenly Heart Pill, a concoction derived from century-old ginseng which greatly boosts one's inner power. The rest of the group is stunned that Yan Myung is being granted such an invaluable treasure. The manager clarifies that the captain receives this honor due to the Tang clan's great hopes for them. To himself, though, he feels his own ambitions for Yan Myung are far greater. The lead character inquires if there's anything further, leaving Woojin baffled. Our protagonist then wonders if he might trade the potion for something else as he has no use for it. This predictably infuriates the rest of the group. They scream at him, questioning if he realizes its value and demanding he surrender it if he won't consume it. The overseer reflects that declining such a tonic is rare, unless one's inner power has already reached its limit. Consequently, he inquires about Yeonmyeong's preferred alternative. Our lead states his desire for the Tang clan's 10 toxins. Afterward, the group assembles in Yeonmyeong's quarters, looking at a heap of armaments. Mirio questions if these items are his only purchases and insists on knowing the potion's whereabouts. Grasping a sword, our hero clarifies that since the toxins were unavailable, he opted for these tools instead. Mirio attempts to strike him, but he sidesteps, prompting her to yell and label him an idiot. Yuri suggests they honor his decision, while Ajon notes that the elder will likely be glad to retain the medicine. Our main character cuts in, disclosing that the pill hasn't been handed back yet. The setting jumps back several hours. The overseer presents the gear to our protagonist, questioning his certainty. Our hero admits disappointment over the toxins but says this will suffice. The manager asks if he has further requests. Our lead inquires about the fate of the surrendered tonic. The manager explains that it will be returned to the apothecary. However, our hero proposes a plan. Should the squad work together to overcome their acting captain, they ought to receive the medicine. The manager concurs, viewing it as an excellent incentive. Turning to the current moment, our protagonist concludes his tale. He then invites them to face him in combat at any point prior to the Venom competition. Instantly, the squad members rush out to retrieve their gear, yelling that Tang Yeonmyeong's time is up. As they depart, the main character vows to show no mercy. He further determines that upon ascending to the role of young clan head, he'll guarantee a Heavenly Heart Pill for every member. Later, he heads out to establish the hierarchy. Time marches on, and the group's progress is significant. During a sparring session, our lead knocks Aijon back and inquires about the number of his defeats. Aijon answers that it's been roughly 173 instances. Mirio wonders if our protagonist ever feels fatigue, whereas Yuri confesses she abandoned combat ages ago, finding her sole purpose in gazing at Yeonmyeong. Mirio turns red, concurring that observing him is quite enjoyable. Eventually, our hero reaches out to Aijon, declaring that because Aijon has conceded, the leadership role now belongs to him. Grasping his hand, Aijon remarks that he can't envision Yeonmyeong being defeated by any rival squads. The overseer then arrives to commend their advancement, officially designating candidate number 28 as the squad's captain. He declares that the true goo poison competition starts the following day. He mentions that other units faced fatalities and removals, yet in contrast, Group 7 remains intact and has reached a level of development rivaling the Bangui Brigade. He issues a final caution, clarifying that during the goo poison contest, any lethal toxins are permitted, with the exception of the legendary 10. Consequently, he urges them to push their skills to the limit. When morning comes, Aijon presents a container of toxins to our hero. He cautions that even a solitary drop of the elixir-neutralized fairy poison is fatal. He describes the properties of the eye-targeting venom. Abruptly, he ceases his fretting and requests a vow of victory from our protagonist. Jun offers a fist bump, which our hero accepts, giving an affirmative before jokingly striking him. He swears that no one but his own comrades could ever best him, then vanishes toward the battlefield, announcing his departure. At the same time, Tang Young Ryung clutches a vial of venom, proclaiming the long-awaited moment has arrived. She considers herself fortunate to possess the 10 toxins and a fresh partner. Subsequently, she steps through a gateway where instructor Jegal Changshan awaits her. She inquires about the specific support the Jegal clan intends to provide, and the teacher explains that since the stadium utilizes his house's array, relocating her to an advantageous spot is simple. Ryong questions what their price for this favor will be. The mentor confesses his kin lacks influence and seeks an alliance with the Tangs while maintaining their independence. Ryong understands he intends to utilize her influence to meddle in internal clan affairs. She wonders about the consequences of spurning them in the future. The instructor replies that this is precisely why he is establishing rapport today. After finalizing their agreement, Ryong appears satisfied. She reflects on the 3 years of suffering she bore for this instant, and as a result, she pledges to eliminate Yeonmyeong and reclaim her existence. In another location, Tang Gukran from Team 3 is seen drenched in gore. Gripping a blade, he appears let down, grumbling that the Tang clan's martial prowess was merely an empty boast. In his wake, the corpses of the fighters who attempted his instruction are scattered. At last, our protagonist reaches the site. Surveying his surroundings, he muses that it is an ideal day for a death. Thus, the goo poison competition commences. Our hero perches atop the precipice, gazing down at the expansive goo poison battleground. Observing the massive scale of the terrain, he recognizes that locating others could be time-consuming. In the meantime, via mystical means, instructor Jegal Changshan observes our lead from afar. Just as anticipated, number 28 of Group 7 has arrived. He believes the young man's talent is being squandered, yet because the Jegal house has committed to their path. To prevent any complications, he resolves to finish him off immediately. Changshan is suddenly stunned to find the protagonist staring straight back at him through the mystical surveillance. It seems impossible to him, as his scrying is shielded by numerous magical barriers. Instantly, the young man strikes the void with his blade, severing the link to the formation. Sensing a hostile presence, he guessed the Jegal clan was responsible. He recalls Supervisor Woojin's decree that the contest must remain free from outside influence. However, he understands they have been tampering with things from the beginning. Consequently, he chooses to let them proceed with their schemes. He leaps from the precipice, intending to demand answers once the duel concludes. Turning to the chamber, Changshan gasps for air, consumed by fear. He reflects on how the youth managed to spot him despite the multiple protective arrays surrounding his position. He knows that failing to break eye contact immediately would have cost him his vision. Furthermore, he witnessed the boy's blade work slice through the very fabric of the magical space. He openly confesses to never having encountered such mastery before. Changshan understands they underestimated him. Number 28 is beyond their control. Consequently, with bloodshot eyes, he determines they must eliminate the youth at any cost to avoid his future vengeance. Elsewhere, a wounded girl flees through the woods, gasping for breath. Fearing for her life, she laments entering the tournament, having only hoped for a respectable showing to support her impoverished family. This leads her to decide on an immediate forfeit. However, she unexpectedly encounters Tangukran, who stands amidst a pile of corpses, drenched in gore. He gazes at her, remarking that it is the perfect moment for a reunion. Attempting to flee and declare her resignation, she is shocked when Tang Gukran suddenly materializes at her back. Though she is ready to yield to anyone and abandon her clan, Tang Gukran ridicules her. He questions her previous comments regarding his ascent to leadership and derides her. Her bravado was short-lived. Additionally, he sneers at her movement skills and describes her inner strength as pitiful. She screams at him, demanding to know why he's being so ruthless when they share the Tang name. Tang Gilkran just smirks, resting his blade against her shoulder. Man couldn't care less if his words are cruel. Besides, he has never truly identified as a member of the Sichuan Tang clan. With a casual flick, he slits her throat in a single motion. Simultaneously, our protagonist dashes across the landscape. He pauses at the sight of a cave, the perfect sanctuary. Because it is deserted, he won't be detected. He enters the cavern, noting the lack of any perceived threats, and decides to reach the transcendent stage right then and there. Retreating into the cavern's shadows, he figures his matured physique will ward off any complication. He starts pooling energy in his midsection, blending his spiritual realization with the power harvested from Ijan's venomous concoction. Suddenly, the young man's body erupts with massive power. He shatters the obstructions in his meridians, and his inner force surges violently. Typically, warriors endure agony as their joints snap and reset, essentially being reborn into a new form. However, since our hero is going through this for the second time, it's a simple task for him. His eyes shimmer with a green light while his entire frame vibrates with power. Finally, the transition concludes. Hearing the perspiration from his forehead, he ponders if purifying his meridians at this moment was prudent. He voices his disgust at the stench of the discharge but notes the pleasant sensation. Eventually, he leaves the cave and reaches the cliffside. To gauge his strength, he lifts his arm and aims 2 fingers ahead. An unseen energy slams into the rocks, causing the cavern to crumble. A grin spreads across our hero's face as he notes the impressive effectiveness of his inner chi and prepares to set off in earnest. In another location, Tangakrin is positioned by a tree, his blade stained with blood. He grumbles about the lack of excitement and questions the individual collapsed on the dirt about their progress. Over the last 3 years, John Gill, utterly defeated, grits his teeth while sprawled on the earth. He laments his misfortune at crossing paths with this opponent. He remembers hearing that Tangakrin, an orphan brought up by the Grand Elder as kin, possesses terrifying power. John Gill believed a preemptive strike might give him an edge, yet he failed to even graze the man's clothing. Facing his imminent demise, his thoughts unexpectedly drift toward Tang Yeonmyeon. Finding comfort in the fact that he avoided an encounter with our protagonist, he begins to chuckle. Tang Yukrin, puzzled, demands to know what could possibly be funny at a time like this. Exhaling deeply, John Gill remarks that he was just reminded of a person far more frightening than Gukrin. This naturally offends Tang Gukrin, who vows to become even more terrifying. Since John Gill's death is certain, he chooses to reveal a hidden truth. He confesses his true identity as an infiltrator for the Black Death Alliance, belonging to the Great Darkness Silent Sword sect, and discloses that his actual name is Mok Ingut. As he lifts his blade to finish John Gill, Mok suddenly becomes paralyzed. A peculiar sensation grips his nervous system, rendering him immobile and leaving him baffled about what is occurring. Our lead character approaches from the side, explaining that he sensed someone nearby and decided to investigate. Glancing at the fallen youth, he notes that the face looks recognizable. He then inquires if John Gill has recovered from their previous encounter, but a bewildered John Gill asks for his identity. The setting then transitions to a flashback of a small child standing in front of an old man. Inquiring if he's being recruited to infiltrate the Sichuan Tang clan, the youth receives a nod from the senior. The elder suggests that given his skills, acting like a homeless child for a short period should easily convince someone to adopt him. He elaborates that the Tangs are about to initiate a contest for the next leader to thin out their numbers. Consequently, should the lad come back successful, he will earn the respect of the entire household. Turning to the current moment, Mac is sprawled out, covered in welts. Gnashing his teeth, he feels a melting sensation within his body and questions what the youth did to him. Meanwhile, our lead approaches John Gill, who gazes at him, questioning if he truly is Yeonmyeon. The hero retorts by asking if another face-first trip into the dirt is required to verify his identity, which makes John Gill pause before admitting it's definitely him. Gesturing toward Tang Yukrin, Yeonmyeon asks if the man admitted to being an infiltrator. John Gill yells in affirmation. Our protagonist recognizes this agent as the stalker he felt prior to ascending the peak. Thus, he chooses to secure him immediately, pulling a venomous dart from Tangakrin's throat. This leaves John Gill stunned. He wonders if the lead applied toxin to the dart, amazed that a tiny needle could trigger such a severe effect. He then proposes they cure the spy to question him regarding his rank. However, the youth declines. He reasons that if the mole belongs to a wicked group like the Black Death Alliance, his intentions are obvious, making medical treatment unnecessary. Observing our hero, John Gill notes his significant transformation, mentioning how Yeonmyeon appears completely unperturbed. Abruptly, John Gill offers a deep bow, expressing genuine regret for their previous animosity. The grin, our lead tells him to let it go, as he isn't one to hold onto old grudges. But John Gill suddenly cries out a caution. From behind Yeonmyeon, Tangakrin springs up to launch a desperate strike, shouting that he'll drag them to the grave with him. Tanggukran lunges, yet the main character disappears. Tanggukran hits the vacant earth, bewildered, as our lead materializes behind the infiltrator. He remarks that while he rarely finishes off those already near death, Tanggukran's persistence in fighting means he'll be completely obliterated. Placing a hand on Tanggukran's shoulder, the youth suggests it's more convenient if there's no body left to dispose of. Leaping at the young man's cold-blooded nature, Tanggukran's eyes well up. He falls over, passing away at once. John Gill observes in amazement, struck by the sheer power on display. He recognizes the agent as a master of the great darkness silent sword style, yet the protagonist overcame him with ease. Turning to John Gill, Yeonmyoung inquires about his next move now that they are alone. John Gill admits defeat but notes he is trapped. With a quick slash of his blade through the air, the boy carves an opening in the barrier and instructs John Gill to depart, adding that a formal goodbye isn't necessary. John Gill expresses gratitude for being allowed to live, after which the hero fades away. Grinning, John Gill hopes for his success. At the same time, within the Darkmoon Sword sect base, the elder clutches a broken spirit orb. Questions the situation, understanding that the destruction of the bead linked to his youngest child signifies the boy's demise. He reflects on his offspring, who was of lowly birth yet possessed unmatched skill. To shield him from his spouse's envy, he had dispatched the boy to infiltrate the Tang clan. Consequently, the elder's hands tighten in fury. Believing he failed in his paternal duties, he swears to avenge this loss. He bellows commands for every follower to get ready to march toward Gangdong Mountain, including that the moment to dismantle the Tang clan has arrived. He vows that every individual named Tang will perish. Night has fallen on the mountain. While dining by the campfire, the youth senses a disturbance. Despite traveling tirelessly, he hasn't encountered anyone, leading him to conclude that the array must have been altered to keep others away from his location. He figures the other survivor is likely conspiring with the Jejeol clan and mocks their bold scheme to gain power over the Tangs. Resting on the earth, he gazes at the lunar glow, admiring the celestial view, longing for his mother to witness such beauty. After pondering her well-being, he drifts off. Meanwhile, Tang Young Ryong lurks in the shadows. Spotting him asleep, she feels relieved to have located a person. Remembering her desire to confront the final survivor, she observes the young man and notes his attractive features. She questions if he might be the nephew of Instructor Jaggle, thinking it a shame to ruin such looks, yet he must be eliminated. She ingests a tablet and uncorks a vial of toxic vapor, surrounding him with lethal fumes. Coating her blade in venom, she instructs the slumbering youth to hold no grudges. Just as she lifts her weapon to kill, the protagonist suddenly speaks up, questioning if she is truly ready for the consequences. He seizes her throat before she can react. Ryong gasps for air as he hoists her upward. The boy demands to know if she is the traitor allied with the Jejeol household, blaming her for staying in safety while others were in combat. He insists on learning the details of her bargain. Ryong grits her teeth, stunned that he anticipated her arrival. But the hero warns her to respond immediately if she values her life. Tang Young Ryong laments losing her knife in the fright, seeing it is out of reach. The youth stares at her, suddenly recognizing her identity. Recognizing her as Tang Young Ryong, he leaves the girl stunned and questioning how her identity was revealed. Given the chaos she previously inflicted upon him, forgetting her would be impossible. He even questions whether he ought to scar her whole face on this occasion. At the same time, within the command center, Instructor Yeagle Changshin is feeling quite aggravated. He believes his strategy has fallen apart since number 28 breached the array, obscuring the view. Changshin observes that while number 10 was rapidly taking out rivals, number 28 finished him off in a heartbeat. As a result, Changshin understands that Ryong, number 2, would be defeated if she fought number 28 at this moment. He fears that a victory for number 28 would spell disaster for the Yeagle family's objectives. All at once, he detects a surge of immense power penetrating the barrier. Upon closer inspection, he spots the full military force of the Darkmoon Sword sect. Jung Yeon Song, the head of the Darkmoon sect, converses with Mak In Hun. Mentions they have arrived with more than 300 soldiers, comprising both seniors and students. He wonders if deploying their entire strength against the Tang family's novices is excessive. Yet Mak In Hu maintains it is essential. Because Gangdong Mountain sits so near their borders, they are required to utterly annihilate the Tang clan. He asserts that a smaller force would have faced certain failure. Yansong concurs but inquires regarding the mole. Clearly annoyed, Mak In Hu explains the informant was unsuccessful, noting it was a person he held dear. Following this, he commands the group to cease their talk and advance. Changshan observes these events via the array, questioning the presence of the Dark Moon sect's master. He concludes an infiltrator was involved and contemplates notifying the Bangui Brigade to intervene. Yet, he hesitates as a grin spreads across his features. He understands that by letting the invaders eliminate number 28, his scheme will stay hidden. The Tangs will remain oblivious to the Jiggle clan's participation. Consequently, he chooses to permit the intruder's entry. Meanwhile, in the woods, the hero has Raeyang gripped by the throat. Gritting her teeth, she finally understands his identity as Meiyang and berates herself for her lack of recognition. As she searches for an opening to deploy her concealed armament, the young man looks down at her fallen sword. He inquires whether the crimson coating is toxic, remarking that he's never encountered such a vivid red venom. Sensing a lapse in his focus, Raeyang reaches for a vial behind her and attempts to hurl it, but the hero intercepts her arm instantly. He rebukes her for these futile efforts. Rather than providing a response, he then seizes the container, questioning if it holds the same toxin found on the edge. Since Raeyang remains silent, he slams her down and grips her jaw. He suggests a trip down memory lane, prompting Raeyang to scream for her release. He commands her to part her lips, but she resists, expressing her loathing and vowing to cooperate. Ignoring her, the hero brings the vial closer to her face, suggesting she sample it to identify the specific venom. Terrified, she shrieks and admits the truth. She identifies it as Fire Dragon Venom, a member of the Tang clan's 10 legendary toxins. He hesitates, recalling that these 10 substances not meant for casual use. He is delighted to discover its authenticity, viewing it as a tonic for himself and deciding that wasting it on her would be a mistake. Raeyang pleads for mercy now that she's talked, even proposing to yield or assist him against the remaining rival. Disregarding her, the hero tightens his hold on her face, asserting that her explanation is incomplete. He insists on knowing if she's in league with about the Jejel clan and their secret pacts, vowing to make her swallow the toxin if she delays. Raeyang confesses the whole story immediately. He admits they suggested a marital bond, explaining the Jejel's desire to unite with the Tang clan to ensure their allegiance. Our hero understands. He perceives that the Jejel family aims to cement their standing by marrying into the lineage of the upcoming clan head. He then deduces that Raeyang was happy to agree. Without warning, our lead swallows the venom instantly. Raeyang cries out in terror, demanding to know what he's doing. He declares she won't get a drop, no matter her reaction. Raeyang is petrified, convinced that even a peerless physique cannot survive the 10 great venoms. She gazes at him, waiting for him to incinerate, but he just burps and notes that it has a strawberry taste. Suddenly, he is completely wreathed in fire. Raeyang watches in amazement, seeing that his grasp hasn't faltered at all. The flames soon vanish and our protagonist looks unchanged. He remarks that it suddenly got quite hot, leaving Raeyang trembling and close to weeping. She recognizes this is only possible if he has attained the fabled status of a poison master, unaffected by any toxin and lethal with just a single breath. Recalling her grandfather's words about such a level, she asks if he is a poison master. Our hero clenches her face more firmly, vexed that she genuinely tried to end him with her lethal intent. After besting her, he inspects his glowing hand. He feels the power from his poison refining technique transform after taking in the fire dragon's essence. He senses he has achieved harmony in both yin and yang martial arts. Expressing gratitude to Raeyang, he notes the worth of what he acquired. Abruptly, the hero gazes upward. A massive glow illuminates the heavens, mimicking a midnight sunrise while the gusts around him intensify. Completely bewildered, he understands that the tournament hasn't concluded. He detects unknown individuals nearby, scores of them, maybe exceeding 300. This leads him to the conclusion that a serious problem has arisen. He reasons that the Jaggle clan couldn't have missed such a massive crowd, implying they intentionally permitted the trespassers to enter the barrier to facilitate a slaughter. Gripping his toxic darts, the lead character grins, viewing the arrival of these training marks as a fortunate turn of events. He then asserts that he is the sole intended survivor of this venomous trial. Meanwhile, the teacher briefs the overseer on the current state of affairs. Upon hearing the news, he yells out in shock, asking for clarification regarding the infiltrators. Changshan verifies the presence of a mole in their ranks. Consequently, Wanjin insists on knowing the identity of the foe and the scale of their army. Gaining uncertainty, Changshan notes that the Dark Moon sect's head is leading more than 300 soldiers. This revelation leaves Wanjin utterly terrified. He questions the Dark Moon sect's presence and their ability to locate a site concealed by the seven-lock Phantom Dome. He concludes that they need to act quickly to intercept them. Changshin puts on a worried front, asserting that this was unforeseen. He clarifies that the invaders have breached the internal realm of the Venom contest. Moreover, he points out to Wanjin that they have blocked their own path to interfere within the barrier. Thus, they are forced to depend on the surviving youths of the clan to fend for themselves. Within the array, the young man stands firm amidst a sea of corpses. Recalling the events of a short while prior, Mak In-hoo looms over Tang Gukran's remains. He laments that the toxins prevented his youngest offspring from experiencing a peaceful passing. At the same time, Yun-sung verifies their successful entry. He observes puncture wounds on the corpse and obvious evidence of an uneven fight. Mak In-hoo bellows at his men, instructing them to scour the area and locate those Tang family vermin. He demands an instant report once they are found, and vows that not a single member of the Tang clan will be left alive. Right away, a squad leaves to investigate the surrounding. A student questions his mentor about whether the chief appears agitated today, remarking that his bloodlust is typically more apparent. The teacher surmises that the cadaver they encountered could have been the informant the leader had positioned. Furthermore, the mentor points out that the sole wound was a neck puncture, which seems baffling unless the dart was dipped in a lethal, fast-acting toxin. He cautions his pupil that the Tangs strike at life itself, no matter one's combat skill. Consequently, he advises the student to remain vigilant against concealed armaments. The student promises to stay alert, but a needle abruptly pierces his throat, causing him to collapse at once. The teacher is bewildered, trying to determine the source of the strike. He sounds the alarm, crying out that they are being ambushed and telling them to unsheathe their blades. He screams for the assailant to show themselves fairly and tells his followers to stay on high alert. All at once, another person yells for the teacher to look up. A deluge of needles pours down from the heavens. The soldiers are unable to parry them and are struck repeatedly. Our protagonist stands amidst the turmoil with a grin, since he considers the one-handed flaming venom style to be incredibly effective against common infantry. Lifting his arm, he employs the vapor method to draw all the toxic darts back to his person. He observes that this technique consumes minimal inner power. Following this, the hero looks over the heap of corpses and resolves to track down the Eastern unit next. In another location, a messenger delivers an update to Mak In-hoo. When Mak In-hoo inquires if the entire squad perished, the subordinate affirms it. He explains that no outward wounds were found, only punctures from needles, indicating a lethal toxin was used, identical to the initial victim. Shortly after, a different scout from the Western Post arrives to announce that their forces there have been wiped out. To make matters worse, the Eastern Dispatch carries the same grim news. Mak In-hoo understands that every single party has been eliminated. Mak notes that barely 60 minutes have passed. Almost 100 warriors were slain in the same fashion. He proposes that a lone individual might be responsible. Mak In-hoo reflects that while a large enemy force would be terrifying, this is undoubtedly the work of a Tang clan expert. Consequently, he senses they have become the prey. He instructs Yansong to lead the men while he readies himself to face the attacker. Although Yansong questions this plan, Mak In-hoo insists he cannot risk any more followers and leaves the survivors in Yansong's care. Yansong then guides the leftover soldiers through a stream. Observing the unsettling stillness and absence of any aura, he recognizes that as the sun dips, darkness is approaching. He fears that failing to locate the hidden foe before nightfall could lead to their total destruction. For this reason, he concludes that retreating to reorganize is the wisest course before casualties mount further. Addressing the ranks, he declares their departure will take place in 1 hour. All at once, a voice questions who made that choice. Perched relaxed in a tree, the main character appears. He remarks that he had no intention of allowing them to escape. Yansong grinds his teeth, baffled by the boy's appearance since he detected no presence. Before Yansong can even respond, his entire squad behind him drops, struck by needles. Finds it hard to believe they perished without even sensing the strike. The youth jumps down and approaches Yansong, who realizes this child is the source of the carnage. He wonders how a mere boy could possess such advanced skill. Seeing the needles return to the protagonist, he suspects it might be void absorption, a feat only top-tier masters can execute. Yet, observing the hero retrieve the needles instead of striking again, Yansong assumes the technique drains massive internal energy. He mocks the boy's arrogance for revealing himself instead of using stealth. Yansong grins, claiming he has never heard of such a young master within the Tang clan. In response, the boy simply slides the needles into his pocket. He remarks that Yeonsong's knowledge is irrelevant, as a man about to die has no need for his name. Naturally, this infuriates Yeonsong. His veins stand out against his skin as he yells that the youth is in a rush to meet his end. He gathers his strength, bursting his clothes as his muscles swell. Then with a shout he throws a massive punch to crush the boy against the wall, but the protagonist halts the blow with his palm, as their energies collide. Yeonsong is stunned that his full power was so easily stopped. Our hero smirks, suggesting this surely isn't his true limit. Finally, he tells Yeonsong he will wait for him to reach his absolute peak. In Yeonsong's past, after the Spearpoint sect, one of the 9 factions was defeated by the Black Death Alliance. Yeonsong chose to join them. On the day he was introduced to the alliance leader, his signature move, the mountain-quaking pole method, underwent a change. After the head of the alliance deemed its title insufficient, it was rebranded as the Divine Swift Strike. Yet, a mere youth is currently outmatching that very skill. Turning to the current moment, the main character parries Yeonsong's punch. During their exchange, Yeonsong becomes increasingly disturbed by the serene look the boy maintains. Meanwhile, the hero contemplates his own strength. He understands that the fire dragon's essence resides within its venom. By channeling this toxin through a poisonous spirit, a power akin to sword chi is forged. Although sword chi can slice through any object, toxic energy permeates all things. The protagonist's eyes snap open, radiating a crimson light like a mythical beast. Consequently, Yeonsong finds it difficult to repel the strike, gritting his teeth while questioning the source of this immense solar vitality. The hero then employs the scorching vitrification method. The temperature rises so sharply that Yeonsong's form is immediately carbonized, causing him to collapse onto the earth. Lifeless, Mayang muses that poison infused with such warmth ought to be termed blazing devil chi. Following this, he inquires of the soldiers which of them wishes to be the next to perish in the flame. Soldiers are terrified by the effortless demise of their commander. The main character informs them that because he doesn't plan on sparing anyone, they might as well meet their end swiftly. All at once, Mak In-hoo, the head of the Dark Moon clan, advances. Unsheathing his blade, he bellows in fury, blaming the youth for the death of his youngest child, the infiltrator, and vowing that the boy will not even leave behind a trace of soot. Mak In-hoo commands his men to disperse and employ the Charyun array to encircle him. Instantly, the warriors hem Mayang in from every side. They caution one another to stay alert for toxins and concealed projectiles as Mak In-hoo dwells on his casualties. He is stung by the grief of losing numerous followers along with his offspring. Thus, he resolves that the protagonist must be destroyed to ensure their deaths were not for nothing. Scanning his surroundings, the young man feels the Charyun formation is familiar from his past drill. Although he previously relied on the whirling chaos dance, he chooses to experiment with a new technique now. All at once, the hero's form begins to blur. A foe cries out that he's vanished, warning the others to remain on high guard. Still, his actions remain completely invisible to them. The lead character weaves through their ranks, slaying them individually. At the same time, Mak In-hoo is baffled by the situation. He's stunned to have lost track of the young man's speed entirely. He questions who this warrior actually is. Mayang eventually shows himself again. Reacting to this, a foe yells out in rage and charges at him to avenge his fallen comrades. Lifting his palm, the youth announces he'll be making use of their weapons. Applying the law of annihilation, he reduces their blades to fragments with a mere gesture. Never once making physical contact, the adversary labels him a freak, stunned that the main character could demolish their steel from a distance. Lead then employs the rule of diffusion to fling the metallic debris outward. Subsequently, he manipulates the energy to keep them rotating in a localized zone, creating a whirlwind of jagged steel. His foe cries out in terror, suspecting this to be the Tang clan's fabled 10,000 heavenly flower rain maneuver. He bellows that such a feat is inconceivable. Abruptly, the vortex of shrapnel strikes the enemy, shredding them. The slaughter is merciless. The youth acknowledges internally that this doesn't quite equal the potency of the authentic 10,000 heavenly flower rain, though it suffices for weak opponents. Consequently, he dubs this move the Iron Fragment Barrage. The corpses drop to the earth one after another. The main character gazes at Mak In-hoo, inquiring if he's ready to fight now that he's used his subordinates to drain the hero's energy. Mak In-hoo is seething with rage. Drawing both blades, he warns the youth against arrogance, vowing that the Tae twin sword style and the silent sword method granted by the chief will reduce Mayang to powder. With a grin, our protagonist labels it a suicidal move. Mak In-hoo charges instantly, yelling his intent to destroy him. In response, our hero merely raises his short blade. Mak In-hoo executes his entire repertoire, the Tae dual blades, the 10-hit silent strike, and the sorrel sword dance. Yet, to our lead, each strike appears sluggish. Main character. Eventually he grows weary and lets out a yawn, further enraging his foe. The scoundrel lunges once more, employing the silent sword technique. He fails to land even a single blow on our champion. Ultimately, Mak In-hoo is spent and gasping for air. Propped up by his weapon, he is stunned that his skills were thwarted by a mere dagger. Our protagonist cuts him off, claiming a degree of mastery in the way of the sword and noting how easily he read Mak In-hoo's rhythm. He then questions if the move should actually be executed like this. As dark vapors begin to emanate from his blade. Witnessing this, a horrified Mak In-hoo demands to know how Mayung is able to use the silent sword style. Mayung breaks down the method. Given the weapon's lethal aura, its design was obviously meant for slaughter. He adds that the energy involved isn't particularly hard to manage. Mak In-hoo is bewildered, struggling to process these words. After all, the elder only gained control over this minor feat after perfecting the supreme dual sword art. Thus, seeing it dismissed so casually is incomprehensible to him. Regarding this style, our hero recalls that his victim from earlier today also utilized the same maneuvers. He inquires if this links Mak In-hoo to the Dark Moon sword set. While our protagonist confesses to limited knowledge of them, he is aware they serve the Black Death Alliance. Notes the common knowledge that the Black Death Alliance adapts combat techniques to fit the practitioner, regardless of their initial background. This customization is precisely why individuals abandon their pasts to enlist. Mak In-hoo questions his point. In response, the protagonist expresses his letdown that such an insignificant skill could cause such a fuss. He claims that any person capable of managing bloodlust can replicate it. He then proceeds to ridicule Mak In-hoo. He suggests that by granting him such a mediocre style, his superiors clearly lacked confidence in his potential. Mak In-hoo reacts with a barrage of insults, which the young man simply disregards. Since Mak In-hoo gave his all, he intends to demonstrate genuine power as a reward, advising him to brace himself. A verdant aura radiates from Mayang as he clarifies that for those at a supreme stage of mastery, the physical size of the weapon is irrelevant. Instantly, the youth's dagger glows with a green hue and begins to lengthen through pure energy. Mak In-hoo watches, completely stunned. The hero then executes the blade rival move. Swinging his blade with massive force, the strike is powerful enough to cleave through the woods and the mountain, carving a deep crater into the ground. Following this, the lead character muses whether the destruction was lessened due to his current physical limitation. Mak In-hoo is baffled by the spectacle, certain that no standard swordsmanship could achieve such a feat. He recognizes that the protagonist manipulates sword chi effortlessly and has attained the ultimate level of skill. Abruptly, the youth inquires in a chilling tone whether that even matters. Paralyzed by fear, Mak In-hoo bolts in an attempt to evade the strike. The young man finds the old man's behavior irritating. He questions how Mak In-hoo expects to escape simply by fleeing. Once he is apprehended, his fate will be sealed. Nevertheless, Mayang pauses before striking once more. He concludes that, being part of the Tang clan, he ought to execute his opponent using their traditional methods. Reaching beneath his garment, he retrieves his rings. Meanwhile, Mak In-hoo flees through the woods in a panic, unable to believe what is happening. He questions who could have nurtured such a beast within the crumbling Tang clan. All of a sudden, the rings soar toward Mak In-hoo from the rear, slicing through timber and barriers as if they were soft curds. Mak In-hoo attempts to parry them, their velocity and sharpness fill him with dread. Recognizing that flight is futile, he understands he has to stand his ground. Despite his evasive maneuvers and defenses, the rings fracture his blade and wound him. Eventually, his arm is slashed. Bleeding yet stubborn, Mak In-hoo yells, asking if the youth is satisfied that he intercepted every attack. He believes that if he survives, he can plot his revenge, guessing the boy exhausted himself with that technique. Yet the young man approaches from ahead with total composure. He inquires if Mak In-hoo deserves praise, leaving the man stunned by the boy's lack of fatigue. With a simple finger gesture, the youth summons all his rings back. Rings suspend themselves in midair, aimed at Mak In-hoo, who grits his teeth in disbelief. He ponders the identity of this wretch and laments abandoning his life for the Black Death Alliance, only to fall to a child he failed to even graze. In the end, Mak In-hoo is utterly vanquished as the rings fell him. The weapons return to Myung's hand, and he feels satisfied with having captured every target. Furthermore, he is pleased with the insights gained from testing various methods. He considers sharing these skills with his followers once he assumes leadership of the clan. Afterward, he prepares to depart, having unfinished business to attend to. There is the elder who pressured his mother and the Jejel family who conspired to seize the clan. He pledges to rectify every wrong, seeking total retribution. Without delay, he cuts right through the barrier with his sword. At the same time, Supervisor Wanjin is yelling outside, asking if there truly isn't any way to get inside. Offering an apology, Instructor Changshin clarifies that interference was intentionally blocked. He acts as though this turn of events was completely unforeseen, while the rest of the squad grows anxious. Yet Changshin harbors hidden, malicious motives. With the gateway locked tight, survival is impossible for anyone inside. He is aware that the Darkmoon Sword Sect deployed more than 300 troops. He suspects that even number 28 will struggle to survive the ordeal. While Changshin views it as a loss of potential, he concludes they must not be seen obstructing the scheme. He comforts himself with the thought that the remaining trainees represent the clan's future regardless. Suddenly, a fracture appears in the sky over the stadium. An odd phenomenon occurs as our hero slices through the array and emerges. The group erupts in excitement, confident that they wouldn't be defeated so simply. Yuri rushes forward to embrace the lead, checking him for injuries. He quips that, so far in the tournament, she is the only person who has actually caused him pain. Changshin appears noticeably strained in the distance. Instructor Jejel Changshin is gripped by fear, finding it inconceivable that 300 warriors failed to eliminate a single young brat. Off to the side, our hero spots Changshin's stressed look, though the instructor swiftly masks his face. In the meantime, John Gill signals to the protagonist and Mayung returns the smile. Changshin is stunned, remembering how the boy shattered the Seven-lock Phantom Dome array previously. Furthermore, the youth sliced through a combat-ready barrier as though it were a trivial task. He views the protagonist as a freak of nature, since even an expert would typically be ensnared. The youth glances toward Changshin. Despite realizing he has the power to end the teacher's life immediately, he chooses to hold off until he secures the leadership. With a grin, Supervisor Wanjin remarks that Mayung has made it out unharmed. The young man offers a bow and expresses regret for the distress he caused, though internally he resolves to prioritize dealing with the Tang family's senior members. Wanjin inquires about the events within and the whereabouts of the others. At that moment, the ground begins to tremble. While the soldiers assume it's a tremor, one man gestures toward the heavens. Rift opens in the sky, spilling forth radiance. Changshin grows anxious, sensing that the vessel holding the array is collapsing. Once the barrier shatters completely, the debris clears to expose the interior. Hundreds of bodies litter the terrain. Examining their attire, Wanjin sees various outfits, but the majority are from the Darkmoon Sword Sect. He wonders if the lead character truly faced all these opponents alone. He confesses that even for him, fighting over 30 would be a challenge. All at once, a soldier cries out, indicating a particular corpse. Recognizing the twin scabbards, he identifies the man as Ma Kinhu, the head of the sect. Observing the mutilated remains, Wanjin understands that even their leader was inferior to Yeon Mayung. The protagonist approaches composedly, mentioning that their sheer numbers meant they weren't difficult to handle. Wanjin anticipated such prowess from the Tang lineage. Young Yun Mayung has already surpassed the capabilities of a clan leader. In the meantime, the remaining groups debate the turn of events. They are stunned that Yeon Mayung defeated more than 100 foes, the renowned Darkmoon Sword Sect among them. They are absolutely certain that the leadership role is rightfully his. Moon Chan, meanwhile, seethes with rage. He is resentful that his crippled arm turned him into a burden. Consequently, he loathes how Tang Yeon Mayung, once a talentless failure, has achieved such immense power. It galls him that someone of his status would presume to ascend. Wanjin cuts into Moonchan's reflections, announcing the competition's end. He proclaims Tang Yeonmyeong, contestant 28, as the lone victor and invites any protests. Moonchan attempts to speak, but Wanjin silences him, with no one opposing the result. He confirms the proceedings were conducted justly. He commands the fighters to assemble in front of the champion. Instantly, a multitude of combatants line up before the young man and his companions. Ai Jun expresses shock at the sheer number of soldiers, feeling quite intimidated. Wanjin reflects that many years following the Tang family's collapse, a fresh source of pride has emerged to spearhead their restoration. Raising his voice, he addresses Tang Yeonmyeong and designates him the successor. Alongside Wanjin, 82 followers drop to their knees to salute the Tang clan's latest leader. Naturally, Yeonmyeong's companions are stunned by the display of devotion. They see that his position alone earns him such profound reverence from the group. They wonder if they are now required to use formal speech when addressing him. Wanjin prays that despite being under 20, the youth will mature sufficiently to restore the family's prestige throughout Sichuan. Our protagonist speaks to the crowd, acknowledging their desires. He vows that their goals will soon be achieved and requests their confidence. Consequently, the soldiers gaze upon him with admiration. Sensing that he has perceived their inner hopes, the gravity of his speech confirms his authority. Thus, they all swear loyalty to Tang Yonmyung. He instructs them to prepare for their return to the primary estate. Yunshin observes their departure, consumed by rage and questioning why Yonmyung possesses it all. Consequently, he pledges to seek vengeance at any cost, even if he must surrender his soul to the devil. Casting one last look of hatred, he swears to ruin the young man. That evening, Taehyo from the allied sect paces across the battleground, inspecting the remains. He mentions that he arrived immediately upon learning of the events. All of a sudden, a figure drops from above, striking the ground with great force. It's Hyunso. He reprimands Taehyo for venturing out solo, arguing that now that he has reached the summit, he must conduct himself accordingly. Disregarding him, Taehyo comments on the stillness, whereas Hyunso finds the idea of resting beside a pile of dead bodies unthinkable. He observes the anomaly that more than 300 individuals were slain. He ponders if the Tang family's former glory proves that an aged eagle surpasses a youthful crow. Yet, he remembers that there were less than 100 relatives present on the peak. Taehyo concurs that it's odd, noting that since the terrain is so exposed, an incident of this magnitude should have been noticed. Hyunso proposes that the Tang clan might be traveling while intentionally evading them. He ponders why they would keep this concealed, particularly given that they provided treasures to celebrate the competition. Subsequently, Taehyung inspects a corpse. He questions if the Tang clan's blade mastery has truly diminished to such a degree, inquiring about the number of victims slain by a sword's edge. Hyunso is perplexed, prompting Taehyung to set him straight. He yells that the weapon used was a dagger, not a sword. He then asks if Hyunso understands these remains were the work of just one individual. Taehyo asserts that his sight is infallible. He clarifies that the majority of the deceased show evidence of falling to a sophisticated blade style. Yet the chaotic nature of the wounds suggests a lack of expertise. Still, the fact that some victims never even unsheathed their blades proves they were eliminated in an instant. Taehyo eventually reasons that individuals possessing such talent are rare. Determined to track this person down, he announces their departure for Sichuan. Hyunso questions the necessity of the Sichuan trip, fearing a chance encounter with the murderer. Taehyo merely sneers at the concern. He reminds Hyunso of his elite status, expressing total confidence in his ability to defend himself. Although Hyunso remains anxious about his own well-being, Hyunso maintains that even an idiot would think twice before challenging him. Hyunso lets out a sigh, realizing he cannot sway his masters. Yielding resolve, he proposes returning to their clan first to notify the leader. Taehyo grins and concurs, observing that with the Black Death Alliance to the south and the demonic cult in the west, the coalition sect is facing significant pressure. Watching his master walk away, Hyunso surmises that Taehyo intends to negotiate an agreement with the Tang clan. His master's goal is for the Tangs to handle the Black Death Alliance before taking down the demonic cult. Yet, Hyunso is skeptical, believing the Tang family has long been in decline and won't succeed. He prays he won't be forced to employ his demonic blade style. Elsewhere, Elder Samu Jangro is busy inscribing a talisman in his chambers. At that moment, a messenger arrives to announce the return of the tournament contestants. Surprised by the early conclusion, the elder presumes Tang Ryung secured a swift victory using her prowess and the fire dragon toxin. However, the individual pauses, noting that Miss Ryung is missing from the returning group. This causes the elder to cry out in alarm. Near the entrance, a pair of sentries speculate on the victor. They are stunned when a massive crowd appears, headed by the hero, his companions, and the other survivors. Spotting the Tang clan's emblem, the watchmen instantly understand the contest has concluded. News travels fast across the village, drawing a crowd astonished by the event's swift resolution. Eager to identify the champion, the onlookers question the identity of the attractive man at the front. Yan Myung's appearance causes the young women to turn red. Abruptly, a voice from the throng calls out for So-yi, who signals back to her parent. The man feels a sense of peace, noting the rumors he heard regarding the high casualty count. Families begin to find one another again. Conversely, several parents break down in tears upon failing to locate their offspring. Observing the scene, Mayang reflects that his own mother is likely anxious for him. He speculates on whether she'll know him and what her face will look like. At that moment, Yuri indicates a bespectacled man. He presents her father, an employee in the administrative office. The young man teases her about seeking a favor for him so soon, and Yuri confesses she couldn't pass up the chance. Her sincerity is quite remarkable. Yuri goes on to say that despite her father's competence, his refusal to flatter superiors has stalled his career. Finding this trait favorable, he concludes that individuals distant from the leadership will be valuable assets once he assumes power. He intends to recruit loyal supporters. Right then, a clan representative named Tang Kisum arrives, loudly commending the fighters and the Jaggle household for their efforts. Instructor Changshan offers a swift bow to Kisum, inquiring about his health. Kisum chuckles, noting Changshan remains the same. He expresses gratitude to the Jiggle clan for supporting the primary residents. He then taps Changshan's shoulder, remarking on the relief of having the 7-lock Phantom Dome array. He credits the formation for the safety of the contestants. Despite knowing it failed, Changshan stays composed. Kisum then declares he has notified the seniors, so they must head to the elders' residence. He begins to send the fighters away to recuperate, but Supervisor Woojin cuts in, stating they won't be visiting the elder house. Kisum spins around, bewildered. Woojin then identifies himself as the honor guard's acting captain. When Kisum questions his hearing, Woojin clarifies that the tournament's regulations specify Stealth and Poison Hall as the victor's rightful place. He maintains that heading there is more logical than visiting the elders. Predictably, Kisum grits his teeth and bellows. He demands to know how a common soldier presumes to lecture the supreme commander on rules, then commands their instant departure under threat of discipline. Woojin understands they are being silenced by the elders' authority, a pushback he anticipated. Abruptly, the main character approaches Kisum and inquires exactly who Kisum is supposed to be. Our hero presents himself as the champion, Tang Yeonmyeong. Subsequently, Kisum provides an account of the events to the council. The seniors ask for the victor's name, and after a brief pause, he admits it is Tang Yeonmyeong. This news causes one of the elders to lose his temper. Striking the table forcefully, he yells that such a thing cannot be. He can't fathom how that kid overcame the fire dragon's venom. The remaining elders point out that even their own pupils, Gukrin included, were defeated. Moreover, Elder Seok finds it hard to believe Yeonmyeong surpassed Gukrin in a mere 3-year span. He's convinced the young man cheated, prompting another elder to propose a full investigation into the matter. Concurring, the 4th elder questions how Yeonmyeong managed to outshine every other contender and insists on an interrogation. Kisum, however, seems reluctant to act. His mind drifts back to the encounter at the entrance. In that memory, the hero informed Kisum that the successor takes commands solely from the clan leader. He argued that the leader's diminished authority doesn't grant the elders the right to rule. Kai-sam, meanwhile, demanded they be disciplined as rebels, yelling that Yeonmyeong's status wasn't yet formal or validated. He feared for his own standing should a person resentful of the elders take charge. Thus, he cautioned Yeonmyeong against provoking them. All at once, Yeonmyeong looked up, his gaze radiating a lethal green aura. A massive surge of power erupted from him, striking Kisum. Paralyzed by fear, Kisum knew any further agitation would cost him his life. Ultimately, the youth proclaimed that regardless of what those defeated elders believe, the contest's rules will be upheld, and they'll proceed to the Hall of Stealth and Poison. He instructed Kisum to inform them that as the tournament concludes, so too does their era of control. Upon hearing Kisum's report, the elders are livid. One, consumed by fury, cleaves the table in half, howling at the boy's audacity. Yet another elder proposes that this turn of events could be beneficial, particularly because Tang Yeonmyeong lacks formal confirmation as the successor. Consequently, he recommends revoking his title to show him his place. Quartet of seniors consents to visit the Hall of Toxins and Shadows to evaluate his skill. Without delay, a senior member instructs the external guards to get ready for departure. He calls upon the leader of the Azure Dragon unit, who appears and takes the order. The senior then pledges to demonstrate the Tang clan's actual power to that troublemaker, reveal who truly holds authority. Simultaneously, Tang Jokyui is stunned at his residence. He questions Myeong about his victory in the contest, which the young man affirms. Jokyui feels the youth possesses a formidable presence and thinks his sister would be proud. Yet another individual is incensed. This is Tang Jihyok, the sovereign of Toxins and Moon Chan's sire. He queries if Myeong truly believes he was victorious, prompting our protagonist to recall Jihyok's remarks from 4 years prior. At that time, Jae-hyuk vowed that he and his parent would suffer consequences for the injury to Moon Chan's limb. Returning to the current moment, our lead remembers how boastful Jai Hyuk was in the past. He cautions Jai Hyuk to watch his speech and actions while residing in the Tang estate. With a sudden murderous glint, our hero suggests that failing to do so might result in Jai Hyuk's son losing his other arm too. Beyond the residence, Overseer Wu Jin thinks back to kiss him, identifying our protagonist as the poisoned phoenix's offspring. He recollects questioning the youth about this previously, though the boy deferred the conversation for another time. While biding his time, Wu Jin reflects on the struggle against the radiant demon lord of heaven. He remembers the clan's combatants battling desperately for survival. In particular, as the Tang clan faced defeat, individuals appeared carrying the former leader's severed head. The opposition advanced relentlessly, ignoring both venom and the threat of demise, leading Wu Jin to recall asking the seniors for reinforcements to repel the assault. Nevertheless, the elders declined, arguing that their own downfall would mean the total ruin of the lineage. Wu Jin is convinced that their assistance would have minimized the destruction. However, the senior members chose to hold the poison phoenix entirely responsible, asserting that she nearly brought the clan to ruin. It hits Wu Jin all at once. The poisoned phoenix stepped down voluntarily to safeguard her little boy. Addressing his soldiers, he remarks that they surely recognize who holds authority now, announcing that those who neglected their duties back then are being given a second opportunity. Suddenly, a voice from the rear commands them to halt. From within the cabin, the protagonist senses the disturbance and chooses to step outside. The council members and their soldiers have gathered, with one senior asking if they truly believe they can challenge the leadership without consequences. Wu Jin is taken aback by the elders deploying their private units, particularly as the leader insists that Yeonmyeong be handed over to him. Stepping forward, our protagonist tells them to calm down as he has already appeared. Tang Jokyui notes the presence of the third elder along with the rest of the group. The senior yells that the young man is arrogant for seizing the leadership role unauthorized. While walking down the steps, he asserts that his victory has already established his right to lead. He points out that the stealth in Poison Hall is currently confirming the results, questioning what else is required. The elder reacts by screaming about the boy's foul attitude and insolent speech. Wu Jin attempts to speak up but is cut off by the senior. He insists the youth reveal every detail of the trial if he values his life. The protagonist retorts that he was under the impression that events during the contest were meant to remain secret. He proceeds to taunt them, questioning if the clan's laws are trivial or if they suspect him of cheating. At that moment, the elder discloses information from the Jagal Lord regarding meddling by the Dark Moon sword sect, along with almost 300 criminals. He claims that external meddling ruins the contest's integrity. Nevertheless, our protagonist clarifies that Tang Gukrin and Tang Young Ryung were responsible for the deaths of other entrants, and he concluded the event by taking their lives. He maintains that since their intrusion occurred post-match, equity remains intact. Infuriated, the senior demands to know exactly who was slain by whom. Our hero suggests he visit Gangdong Mountain personally to inspect the remains. Without delay, the elder lunges forward, charging at the youth with incredible velocity. Lightning crackles through the air, sparking cries of terror from the onlookers. Yet our protagonist catches the elder's strike. He coolly labels him an idiot, questioning if he's struggling to accept his granddaughter's passing. Third elder is stunned that his blow was parried using only a single hand. He reflects on how his demon-slaying toxin is meant to strip away vision, and hearing the moment it touches someone, leading him to speculate if the young man's inner power exceeds his own. He instantly rejects the notion as absurd, however. Bracing for a follow-up strike, the elder bellows, demanding how the boy has the nerve to ridicule a superior. Replying with an action, our hero produces a vial of venom seized from Ryung. When the elder inquires about its origin, our protagonist counters by asking if he identifies the substance. He discloses that this is the very container the elder provided to his granddaughter before smashing it on the ground. A massive inferno bursts forth upon impact. Our protagonist remarks that a common toxin might have been excusable, but this belongs to the Tang clan's 10 elite poisons. Overseer Wu Jin is taken aback, wondering if the liquid inside is truly that fabled venom. Mayong verifies its identity as fire dragon poison, leaving Wu Jin in awe. Observing the intense heat radiating from the flames, he understands that the vault under the third elder's supervision was definitely breached. The senior is visibly rattled. Our protagonist then questions Wu Jin on whether the 10 poisons are so insignificant that they should be exploited for selfish desires. Wu Jin denies this firmly, clarifying, their lethality poses a threat even to elite fighters. Because the formula has vanished, the existing toxins hold a worth far exceeding that of gold. Consequently, he asserts that utilizing them for private benefit deserves a harsh penalty. At once, the remaining seniors cry out in opposition. They demand to know how Woojin has the audacity to suggest such discipline for a clan leader and command the sentries to apprehend him. The lead character asks if they believe their status as elders grants them immunity from the sex regulation. He promises the senior a dignified end, and following those words, the young man activates a fire-based skill. The old man's form transforms into stone and crumbles to the floor, striking the onlookers with a mix of awe and terror. Our protagonist expresses his hope that the man's granddaughter is waiting for him beyond the grave. He labels him a dishonest senior with no authority to evaluate the patriarch, stating that he alone determines his own position. Although Woojin finds it shocking yet admirable that our hero confronts the council with such fearlessness, he understands that the Tang clan's future might be altered at this moment. A different senior loses his temper and directs his soldiers to strike, yelling for them to capture our protagonist without delay. Nevertheless, the youth addresses the great elder, Tang Xiaokjia. He inquires whether the high-ranking leader is aware that his student put the entire household at risk. The great elder questions the meaning of his words. The boy asks if he truly remained ignorant of the fact that his pupil was an undercover agent for the Dark Moon sword sect. To which the great elder bellows that such claims are absurd, charging Argai with fabrication. Still, the youth highlights that the Dark Moon sword sect breached the tournament grounds. The High Elder insists on seeing proof of the plot. Unexpectedly, Mayung offers to provide it. At that moment, the vice director's son, John Gill, emerges from the back. Removing his outer garment, he identifies himself as the only person who saw what happened. John Gill clarifies that he engaged in combat with Tanggukran prior to his encounter with Yang Mayung, displaying the numerous lacerations across his entire body. He asserts that such injuries aren't the result of toxins or hidden arts, but rather specific blade work. He also mentions that he failed to recognize this in the heat of the moment. It appeared to be a dual blade style. As the High Elder attempts to justify himself, the remaining elders cut him off. One remarks that this isn't just a hunch, remembering how he observed the student practicing a sword art from afar. He points out the striking resemblance between the corpse's injuries and John Gill's, a fact John Gill corroborates. He further reveals that Tanggukran admitted to being an infiltrator called Mok Ingo just before attempting to take his life. This causes a stir among the elders as they remember whispers of an abandoned illegitimate son named Mak Inguk born to a servant. They now see the truth. Therefore, our protagonist expresses his gratitude to John Gill for speaking up. With a grin, John Gill replies that since he survived because of the young man, this is simply a matter of settling the score. At this point, the High Elder is visibly unnerved, finally grasping that his pupil was indeed a mole. Nevertheless, prioritizing his own survival, he bellows for the other elders to obstruct our protagonist and seek vengeance for the third elder. But our lead cuts in, cautioning them against reckless behavior now that proof has been provided. The High Elder maintains his innocence, insisting that his circumstances are nothing like those of the third elder. This, our hero questions if his own rank is so trivial that it can be disregarded. He wonders aloud if Tanggukran would have surrendered the entire clan to the Dark Moon Sword sect upon becoming the leader. Is the Grand Elder going to feign innocence? Labeling it a lapse in judgment, he ignores the elder's plea to stop. In a flash, our hero slices through the old man's limb. The crowd stands frozen in disbelief. Our lead informs the Grand Elder that the charge of sheltering an infiltrator is unavoidable. He notes that typically, his cultivation center would be shattered to strip him of his powers. Because conspiracy hasn't been proven, this penalty will suffice. The Grand Elder whispers his gratitude for the leniency. Nevertheless, his intentions remain dark. He realizes the youth's movements are blindingly quick, and while feigning an attempt to halt the hemorrhage, he retrieves a concealed toxin. Within his grasp, the Grand Elder clutches a vial of invisible venom. This substance ranks among the Tang clan's 10 deadliest concoctions. It lacks any hue, scent, or flavor. While it doesn't match the strength of the authentic version, it represents the culmination of his work over several decades. Ultimately, he swears to eliminate the young man before he can even perceive the threat. As the Grand Elder readies the secret venom, our protagonist detects the scheme instantly. With a rapid strike, he removes the Elder's other hand, the one gripping the vial. A different elder bellows in fury, demanding an explanation for such insanity. He points out that a promise of compassion was just made and wonders if Mayung truly believes he is fit to lead the clan after such an act. Youth merely directs their attention to the detached limb on the floor. As everyone gazes downward, they discover the container of poison lying beside the severed hand. The shattered vial leaks its contents onto the ground. Our hero remarks that the Grand Elder contaminated his own circulation for a final, frantic strike, labeling the move pathetic. Collapsed on the floor, the Grand Elder cries out for the clan leader. Leniency, yet our protagonist lifts his palm, which glows with emerald power. He proclaims that Tang Seokjung tried to murder the clan leader and cause internal chaos. Consequently, he brands him a turncoat and declares the penalty will be extreme. Without hesitation, the youth strikes, decapitating the Grand Elder in a single motion. The onlookers are left in a state of pure horror and disbelief. The main character then speaks to the surviving elders, cautioning them that the Tang family statutes apply to everyone. Should any elder exploit their rank to ignore these rules, he will take it upon himself to deliver retribution. He acknowledges the Tang clan's current vulnerability and the risk of its total downfall. Nevertheless, he makes a solemn pledge. He guarantees that the kin will be shielded from the dangers of wicked factions and the demonic cult. He swears they shall enjoy a tranquil life within Sichuan. Turning his attention toward Wujin's soldiers and the rest of the assembly, he asks the entire crowd, not just the elders, if they recognize him as the legitimate leader of the family. That evening, at the home of Tang Jaihai, an elderly lady hurries inside with an update. The protagonist's mother urges her to relax and explain clearly, asking for confirmation that Yeon Mayung truly emerged victorious in the competition. Leaping with happiness, the woman affirms his success, noting that every person present at the Stealth and Poison Hall gave him their recognition. She expresses her delight at how remarkably he is maturing. Jaihai sheds tears, lamenting that Tang Long Rying isn't there to witness this moment. In the meantime, our hero is occupied with duties. Although he wished to visit his mother immediately, a massive workload requires his attention first. Consequently, he attends a formal briefing. Tang Jokyui proclaims that, according to the new leader's instructions, all upcoming matters will be managed within the Stealth and Poison Hall. Additionally, any major resolutions must be sanctioned by the family headquarters. In essence, the authority once wielded by the elders is shifted to the Stealth and Poison Hall. Though the elders seem resentful, not a single one voices their grievance. Unexpectedly, Elder O interjects. He concedes that our protagonist is brilliant but argues that his lack of seasoning is an issue, proposing they serve as guardians until the patriarch fully matures. Our hero admits that Elder O's reasoning is sound. Still, he realizes they are merely exploiting his youth to cling to their status. He recommends deferring the regency debate for another time and wraps up the current handover of power. Afterward, the probe verifies that the third elder was indeed trafficking fire dragon poison, leading to widespread skepticism regarding the Elder Council's proficiency. Because of this, the Stealth and Poison Hall takes over the administration of the 10 poisons. Having been stripped of most duties, the elders are left with nothing but their personal battalion. The protagonist proclaims that the elders will maintain command over their units. However, they are now required to finance these troops out of their own pockets. Understandably, the elders are visibly irritated. RG contributes by suggesting that any funding previously provided by the vice director be cut off entirely. With the Grand Elder gone, the direct command and sovereign spirit units were left without a superior. To remedy this, our hero integrates both groups into the Shadow Troop and places them under the Stealth and Poison Hall's control. Their role shifts to outer perimeter security, with pay scales lowered to match regular sentries. When some soldiers protest the reduced income and rank, our hero steps forward to address them. He tells them to discard their former sense of superiority, as their combat skills have deteriorated. He cautions that those who wish to avoid being fired must carry out their assignments. Moreover, he promises strict penalties for any negligence, responsibilities, or generating strife. He shuts them down effortlessly with those words. After 2 days, Jagal Changshin and the fellow teachers pay homage to our hero. The instructor refers to him as the clan patriarch, though Changshin is secretly quite apprehensive. He understands that our protagonist utilized both power and legal right to dissolve the Council of Elders, fearing that a single verbal slip might result in a catastrophe. Bullied expresses regret for his absence due to a packed agenda, then mentions he has a request for them. The teacher stares at our hero, finding it hard to accept that this is the same person who was trainee number 28. Our main character catches his expression, inquires if his attire is startling, noting that his followers insisted on him wearing suitable clothing. Changshin reflects that despite our guy not holding the formal title of leader yet, he's unmistakably asserting his control over the household. He tentatively asks about the nature of the favor. Mayang describes how he's heard of the Jagal clan's exceptional protective arrays and asks to implement them here to ward off wicked factions. Nevertheless, Changshin offers an apology, stating that the primary clan array requires the leader's authorization for setup. Moreover, accomplishing that task necessitates specific ancestral relics and the assistance of several formation experts. Suddenly, projectiles fly from the young man's hand as a green aura saturates the room. These needles strike every instructor who accompanied the leader. Instructor spins around, horrified to find his peers incapacitated, and demands to know why the patriarch is acting this way. Abruptly, a needle halts mere inches from his eye. Our protagonist reveals his knowledge regarding the pact with Tang Young Ryan, charging the instructor with deliberately allowing the Dark Moon Sword sect to invade. He questions if Changshin truly believed such actions would go unpunished. He remains steadfast in his position, demanding that a defensive system similar to the Jagal clans be established within the Tang family's inner sanctum. Furthermore, this is a mandate rather than a request, and he will not tolerate another rejection. He reminds Changshin that Tang tradition requires a tenfold retribution for any slight. This is precisely why the elders were executed by his hand. He then begins a countdown to 3, warning that if he doesn't receive a favorable reply, he will personally travel to the Jagal residence to hold the instructor there responsible. He lets Changshin ponder the potential fallout until the man finally gives in. He consents to the demand, bowing low and imploring the hero to show mercy to his kin. Satisfied with the result, our hero offers a smirk. Anticipates that Ong will move swiftly. Afterward, Mirio, Ijun, and Yuri show up. The protagonist had meant to contact them sooner, but he was preoccupied with various matters. Mirio tentatively asks why she was summoned, using his formal title as family head. However, he simply laughs, stating that formalities are unnecessary when they are by themselves. Wish is for them to behave normally, though Yuri feels hesitant about it. Right away, they make themselves comfortable, resting their feet atop the desk while boldly calling out his name. The leader sighs, wishing for a bit more decorum. Yuri then stretches, inquiring about the reason for the meeting, and he reveals that her father has been named a senior official. Women cry out in surprise. Mayung insists her father is well qualified, urging her to take advantage of this perfect chance. Yuri feels joyful yet remains concerned about accepting the role so abruptly, certain there was pushback. Our protagonist confesses that quelling the dissent was a simple task. However, he cautions that issues will arise if her father fails his responsibilities or steals funds. Yuri instantly stands up for him, claiming he would never do such things. So he instructs her to assist her father in adjusting to the position. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Yuri nearly weeps. Next, he addresses Mirio and AI Jun. Summon them to check on their status, intending to hire highly skilled individuals who were previously dismissed by the council. Mirio admits she has no suggestions, prompting him to question Ijan regarding the Medicine King Hall, given his ties to the place. Ijan wavers, confessing his uncertainty about mentioning it since it concerns Yan Myung as well. He discloses that the Medicine King Hall played a part in the poisoning of Yeon Myung's father. This revelation leaves Mirio and Yuri stunned. Yuri strikes the table forcefully, demanding to know how they could dare target the family of the successor. However, the protagonist interrupts her, requesting that Ijun proceed. Ijun clarifies that the Medicine King Hall operates autonomously, separate from the Elder Council's influence. Their revenue comes from providing medical services and distributing remedies. Moreover, the Tang clan managed to endure the aftermath of the Heaven's brilliant Demon Lord crisis because of their financial resources. Ijun discloses that his grandfather once presided over the Medicine King Hall before being removed from his post. He describes how Yeon Myung's father made daily visits to his grandfather, defending the hall's reputation against detractors. Yet, because he possessed no internal energy, the physical altercations left him with severe internal trauma. Upon hearing this, the young man understands that his father resisted regardless of the consequences. Ijun goes on, noting that the tension reached a breaking point when the deputy head, Tang Il, uttered horrific insults regarding Yan Myung's mother. When Tang Il's arguments failed, he attempted to resort to violence, but Ijun's grandfather stepped in to stop him. That event resulted in Tang Il being disqualified from the leadership succession. The protagonist questions if Tang Il's bitterness led him to poison his father, which Ijun validates. He further explains that Tang Il murdered Yan Myung's father and seized control of the Medicine King Hall. Furthermore, he administered poison to Ijun's grandfather and threw him in a cell. Mirio inquires why these events remained hidden, but Ijun notes that nobody was willing to testify. He participated in the tournament as a means of survival, believing they would hesitate to execute a witness to the truth. He breaks down in tears, admitting his terror at discovering his grandfather's current state. He expresses regret for failing to assist Yeonmyeong, yet the young man wonders why the deputy leader spared the grandfather's life rather than ending it. Ijun speculates that a hidden department exists within the hall, referencing a core essence derived from a legendary beast known as the 10,000-year fire cart. Yuri and Mirio are stunned by its existence, prompting the protagonist to ask for a definition of an inner pill. Ijun describes it as a catalyst for boosting internal power, citing a myth about a master who reached the fire realm after eating one. AI John cautions that the medication is laced with potent toxins. Therefore, anyone who ingests it without first neutralizing the venom will surely perish. Additionally, if the purification process is botched, the medicine's power fades. Our hero asks if Ijun's grandfather is the only individual who can maintain its strength without extracting the poison, and Ijon confirms this. He elaborates that the acting head intends to ingest the pill, reach the fire realm, and desert the Tang family with his supporters to found a separate sect. The group is understandably outraged by this mutiny. Myung views the man as a fool for chasing the fire realm without attaining real enlightenment. Our hero thanks Ajon for being truthful and then raises one final point. If they clear out the current staff and put the grandfather back in charge, can the Medicine King Hall run effectively? Ajon squeezes his fist and insists it can, certain he can instruct new disciples if required. Our hero smiles, saying that is enough. He tells Mirio that they will conclude her narrative later, then gets up and proclaims they are going to the Medicine King Hall immediately. AI John asks if our protagonist is positive about not seeing his mother beforehand, but our lead insists she will be understanding. He declares that, as the head of the house, he cannot permit a traitor to go unpunished. Furthermore, his mother would never want him to remain passive after learning of his friend's hardships. This moves Ijon to tears. Finally, our hero opens the gate and pledges to completely destroy the Medicine King Hall as Ijon once knew it. Within the Medicine King Hall, the present chief, Tang Il, is frustrated. He has learned that the son of Tang Long Rayang has assumed leadership of the family, a development he finds bothersome. He is also concerned that Tang Ijun has yet to return to the hall. He knows Ijon isn't the sort of person to forsake his grandfather. Still, he assumes Ijon must care more about staying alive. Tang Il is confident he can slay the elder whenever he wishes, yet the inner pill remains an obstacle. To fully harness its power and reach the fire realm, he requires the old man's testimony. Sadly, the grandfather will stay silent even if he recovers his wits. Tang Il weighs the risk of extracting the toxin himself, but dreads a failure that might ruin the pill. Just then, a follower bursts in, yelling that the clan leader has arrived. Tang Il commands him to be silent. Meanwhile, outside, the Tang clan fighters are neutralizing the Medicine King Hall sentries, paving the way for our protagonist and Ijon. Later, Yijun confronts the group and demands to know the reason for their behavior. Mayang asks Yijun if he has located his grandfather, to which Yijun, clenching his teeth, replies that he has not. He searched every corner but found no clues. Consequently, he roars at the men, insisting they reveal where they stashed his grandfather. The men exchange looks and claim to be in the dark. Without hesitation, our hero gives an order to Supervisor Wu Jin, who proceeds to behead the liars. Our protagonist glares at the survivors, asking who they think they are fooling with those dishonest expressions. He cautions them against pushing his limits and tells them to talk. Paralyzed by fear, they finally admit that once the tournament began, the current chief ordered them to lock the former leader in the Noya. AI Jun is filled with revulsion. He questions how they could confine his grandfather in such a location, noting that the Noyak was built to quarantine contagious patients. However, it was abandoned because the freezing, damp conditions only worsened their health. Our hero announces that he and Aijan will enter the Noyak and instructs the Bangi brigade to secure the hall and wait at the portal. Woojin is eager to comply. Meanwhile, the Medicine King Hall affiliates plead for their lives. Nonetheless, Wu Jin and his squad pull out their weapons and commence the execution. As they descend into the cavern, our hero remarks on its profundity and feels the name is entirely suitable. They continue their approach until they eventually reach the threshold. Ai Jun weeps, terrified that time has run out, yet Mi-young reassures him that his grandfather still breathes. Ai Jun questions if he can be certain. The young man verifies his discovery through his green aura. Upon entering the dungeon, Aijan exclaims that he sees his grandfather. Our protagonist advances and slices through the metal bars. Aijan hurries to the elder's side in tears, noting his health has deteriorated further. He surmises that the mountain-subduing toxin was administered. Our lead inquires about any other substances involved. Aijan mentions Thunderbolt and the idiocy toxin, which targets the mind to cause mental decay instead of death. He notes that once it reaches the brain, cures fail unless caught immediately. Mi-young claims the solution is easy, much to Ajun's astonishment. Our hero instructs Ajun to keep the man still, while resting a palm on the elder's torso. He intends to channel his internal power to consume the toxins via the poison-devouring frenzy and universal absorption techniques. Abruptly, the grandfather's blackened skin regains its natural hue and his fingers move. Aijan watches in awe. Our protagonist reflects on how his method has neutralized lethal venoms, repeatedly allowing him to extract the venom cautiously to protect the weak frame. Aijan cries out that the old man is respiring and looks much healthier. With a grin, our hero tells the elder to wake up, prompting him to look around. He whispers a question about his location before spotting Aijan and knowing who he is. He then gazes at our protagonist, wondering if he is Long Ryan. Once the grandfather is completely alert, they recount the entire situation to him. Elder recognizes the youth as the offspring of Long Rayang and the rightful successor, which the boy confirms. He mentions learning from Aijun about the old man's history of protecting his father. With tearful eyes, the grandfather notes how unpredictable fate can be. He expresses sorrow that the child who never saw his father's face due to his own errors ended up being his savior, and he remarks on how splendidly Long Rayang's son has matured. Hopes Long Ryan is observing this from the heavens. Consequently, the elder asks for the honor of dedicating himself to the service of the family's heir. The boy agrees, removing his green cloak and placing it on the old man. He clarifies that his arrival was intended to establish new roles for the commander and Aijan, then directs them to leave since others are waiting. As they exit the cavern, Tang Il is visibly shaken. He is stunned by the old man's steady stance and screams, asking how they could heartlessly strike the disciples of the Medicine King Hall. Reminds them that the hall generates the revenue required to sustain the Tang clan and asks if they wish for the family's downfall. The youth asks if Tang Il intends to continue feigning ignorance even after seeing where they emerged from. He asks if those are his parting words. Mei-young looks to the grandfather for any final thoughts, but the elder merely turns his head away. Seeing no other option, Tang Il begins to bolt, yelling for people to get out of his way. He realizes staying means death, but a needle suddenly embeds itself in Tang Il's neck. His entire body locks up. Our protagonist explains that it is the heart-rupturing flame toxin crafted by Aijan, then questions if Aijan's poison isn't a suitable replacement for Tang Il. He observes that Tang Il is likely unable to hear him anymore, and then Tang Il hits the dirt, dead. The boy turns to the others and instructs the Bangui brigade to wrap things up. Following his typical routine, Woojin carries out the commands, eliminating every individual within the Medicine King Hall to thoroughly purge its depravity. Word travels fast through the family that the hall has been dismantled. This leads to debates among the men regarding the Tang clan's viability now that the hall's financial backing is gone. They question the logic behind the new administration's decision to abolish their primary source of income. Within the facility, the protagonist confronts a glowing crimson sphere. The elder cautions him that although the Medicine King Hall is finished, the artifact remains perilous. Consequently, he inquires if the young man intends to claim it immediately, advising a brief delay until the toxic aura subsides. However, the youth gazes at the sphere with anticipation, expressing gratitude to the elder while insisting on claiming it exactly as it is because he intends to utilize it shortly. He believes that a toxin potent enough to be seen by the naked eye is far too valuable to be neutralized. Mei-young then reaches out to seize the object. Even before making contact, a sensation of his skin liquefying hits his fingers, causing him to tighten his hand into a fist. He recognizes the presence of a fierce incendiary toxin, which is typical for an entity born of molten rock. Nevertheless, he observes that it fails to match the intensity of the previous fire dragon's venom. He reflects that an average person would be incinerated from within if they attempted to absorb this energy in its raw form. Thus, he concludes this is an ideal opportunity to evaluate the potency of the 10 poisons. He shuts the container, sensing the raw energy of the essence trapped within. Returning to the Stealth and Toxicology Division, Tang Jihi arrives to see her son. Stepping inside, she asks forgiveness for the disturbance and remarks to the protagonist how fortunate she feels to have him as her child. The protagonist greets her, remarking that this home was always hers to begin with, making her presence here only natural. Observing her, he reflects on her enduring beauty, despite the visible toll that years of anxiety have taken on her features. Jihai rushes toward him, embracing him firmly while expressing her deep gratitude for his unharmed arrival. As he returns the hug, his mind drifts back to memories of his previous existence. He recalls how his final moments before dying were consumed by remorse, as there was nobody to celebrate his joys with. Consequently, he determines that one lifetime of sorrow is more than sufficient, swearing that starting today, he will safeguard this current life. The lead character inquires if she encountered the Bangi Brigade, to which Jihai confirms she did. She explains that they arrived earlier today to assist with her belongings, adding that seeing so many recognizable people made the experience feel somewhat strange. Gesturing toward the container he's holding, she asks about its contents. He replies that it's a gift intended for her. Upon opening it, a luminous sphere is revealed, leaving Jihai completely stunned. Identifying it as the 10,000-year fire carp's internal essence, she argues that as the head of the clan, he is the one who should consume it. Nevertheless, he declines, asserting that his mother is the rightful recipient. He maintains that the essence is currently of no benefit to him. A bewildered Jihai asks for clarification, and the protagonist clarifies that he has already reached a point where the orb can no longer enhance his power. Then grasps her hand, and an immediate wave of power radiates from his body. Jihai is taken aback by the overwhelming warmth, questioning if he has truly attained the fire realm. After he validates her suspicion, Jihai ponders her son's incredible achievement of reaching such a level. While she wants to commend him, she is simultaneously concerned that the Tang family might be targeted by foes if this news breaks. Noticing her apprehension, the main character addresses her softly. He expresses his wish for her to enjoy a long life on behalf of both herself and his father, requesting that she remain by his side to witness his progress. Reopening the container, he cautions her that the internal core is gradually fading away, requiring her to act quickly. She presses her lips together, understanding that despite her son's great strength, parents' instinct to shield their offspring remains. She eventually accepts the offering, noting that declining his present would be impolite. With a grin, she inquires if he recalls her former title from her youth. The protagonist asks for clarification, and she mentions her status as Sichuan's premier belle, known as the Poison Phoenix. As she grasps the container, a powerful surge of vitality radiates from her. The young man is stunned. She confirms this, explaining that she holds the Poison Phoenix moniker, a distinction reserved for the clan's most renowned figure. She confesses her abilities may fall short of his, yet wonders if she still seems formidable. The boy is amazed to discover that his mother had been concealing her true potential. It never occurred to him that she practiced cultivation independently. He understands that for a fire realm expert, sensing even minor vibrations is easy, making such secrecy quite a feat. He concludes that her ability to mask it from him proves her mastery, noting she has attained the highest level right before the release of her full essence. Jihai commences her meditative training, attempting to draw in the spiritual essence of the core. Aware she must surpass her boundaries, she struggles with the intake process. Technique is straightforward: gradually ingest and integrate the spiritual energy. Yet, the object is vanishing too rapidly, causing her to fear that much of it will vanish before she concludes. Abruptly, the youth rests his palm on her shoulder. He explains that true insight isn't gained through mere contemplation, suggesting she instead soak up, examine, and mirror her environment. Mentions he'll assist her slightly, then proceeds to transmit his power into her. Jihai is startled as Yeonmyung's essence blends with the internal core. She identifies this as the Tang clan's toxic life force cerulean glowing heart method, and understands that gradual assimilation is unnecessary. Instead, she can convert the raw power into a form she knows well. take it all in at once. Concentrating, she reflects on how fortunate she is to have such a wonderful child. At last, the procedure concludes. The young man retreats, announcing that through this act, his mother has also attained the fire stage. The entire group has gathered at the dark poison hall's primary structure. Nevertheless, the atmosphere is strained. Hyuk Dang, who leads the Poison Lord squad, complains about being summoned for a discussion at this unusual hour. They believe their schedule is being disregarded. Subsequently, the fifth elder inquires of Jiokui regarding the remaining wait time. Even if Yeonmyeong is the young master, forcing everyone to assemble and linger is excessive. Suppressing his irritation, Jiokui states that he should be there momentarily. Just then, the sentries herald the young master's entrance. Yeonmyeong walks in, expressing gratitude for their early arrival and clarifying his desire to share news with the whole group. As he moves forward, the fifth elder asks for details regarding the declaration. The youth remembers it was the fifth elder's idea for him to name a proxy to oversee family matters until he matures. Confirming this, the elder asks if he has a specific candidate in contemplation. Replying, our hero turns to ask why the elder assumes the choice would be made from their ranks. While the fifth elder ponders the potential pick, a person walks in, making everyone go still. The senior members are stunned by her appearance, remarking that over a decade has passed, yet she remains in good health. Observing their shock, the protagonist remarks that nobody else is fit to command their sect besides her, inquiring if his assessment is correct. Following the accusations from the elders regarding the demonic assault on Jihidang, she was stripped of her status as the family's successor. Nevertheless, a decade later, Phoenix emerges at last from the wreckage. This individual is Jahia, who notices several recognizable individuals as she walks in, recalling the events of the prior evening ahead of the official ceremony. Jahia reflected while bathing, appreciative of her newfound transcendent state, yet she remained uncomfortable with the fragrance her skin now emitted. A sense of self-consciousness washed over her, as she felt the servant shouldn't witness her in such a state. She then realized her control over internal power required further refinement. Having reached this superior level of existence, she is capable of gauging Yeonmyeong's progress, observing that he is on the verge of the subsequent tier of power. She remembered that even the leader of the Dark Alliance didn't reach such heights until past the age of 20. Questioned if some remarkable event occurred throughout the advanced trial. A slight grin appeared on her face, certain that she and her child had significant tasks to complete before the night ended. Following this, the main character applauded and offered his praises for his mother's spiritual breakthrough. The two shared a meal, engaging in a joyful conversation. He questioned the methods her son used to reach transcendence, still finding it hard to fathom his immense success given his youth. To himself, the youth acknowledged the legitimacy of her curiosity, yet he was unable to disclose that his awakening stemmed from recollections of a previous existence. Consequently, he chooses to explain the circumstances of the ordeal. He inquires whether Jia was aware that the third elder had illicitly introduced one of the 10 toxins into the competition. Jia gives a nod, noting that the fire dragon's breath toxin was passed to his granddaughter. Much to her shock, Yeonmyeong discloses that he consumed the venom himself. Anxious, she questions his foolhardiness, reminding him of the fatal risk. The protagonist dismisses her fears with a light-hearted chuckle, explaining that Yang Rei Yang used one of the 10 legendary toxins against him during the Gu poison conflict. Unexpectedly, he discovered the secret to transforming venom into inner power, allowing him to reach a state of transcendence. Startled, his mother reflects on the fascinating variety of paths to spiritual awakening. Meanwhile, the young man is relieved that she believes his account. He then mentions a rumor heard from a servant during her bath regarding the destruction of the medicine hall, inquiring if he was responsible. At this moment, the main character chooses to be honest since the matter involves his father, so he confirms it. He provides a full account, and upon hearing it, Jai-hai tightens her grip, admitting she wished the news were false. She then expresses concern for Lee John's struggles and notes she has a request. When Yeonmyeong inquires further, his mother explains that she spent years in seclusion following her husband's death out of fear for her son's safety. Consequently, she wants to establish a legacy that secures his position as the rightful heir. Hearing this, our protagonist offers a gentle smile. Back in the present, Jai-hai's entrance into the chamber triggers a wave of whispers. Observers remark on her youthful appearance, questioning if her old strength has returned. Jai-hai is joyfully addressed as Sister Jai-hai. Yeonmyeong then proclaims that starting now, His mother, Jai Dang, is the new head of the Sachin Dang family. The fifth elder stands paralyzed, realizing she is the actual chief rather than a temporary proxy. Jai opens her address by thanking the crowd for attending. She explains that while she is named head of the clan, she is merely governing for her child until he reaches adulthood. To honor his confidence, she is laying the groundwork for a more powerful organization. With those words, she opens the early meeting by examining the day's business. Per Jai's decree, the defunct medical hall is rebranded as the Hall of Remedies. Accordingly, she designates Hoyal Dang as the chief and Yi Jun as his assistant. Yuri's father is named the Executive Council's new director and tasked with auditing group's capital. He promptly discovers signs of fiscal malpractice among the seniors, and the seized assets are enough to replenish the treasury for the time being. In the interim, Captain Jai Hyuk Dang is relieved of his duties, along with most of the elders who were caught stealing from the clan. Essentially, every person misappropriating the money is ousted from their role. This all transpires in just a few days. Now our hero, perched on a mountain ridge, muses that his mother is a natural-born commander. Under her guidance, various internal disputes are settled. He recalls his initial desire for a quiet existence alongside his mother, merely playing a small part in things. He is currently beset by different priorities. His companions, loyal followers, and the various clan members are all individuals he intends to safeguard during this lifetime. Nevertheless, it's quite ironic that he lacked the ability to even safeguard himself recently. Now, however, the youth is resolved to increase his power to shield his people from the dark unorthodox coalition's master and the demon lord of the great skies. In the meantime, word of the Dang family's fresh leadership gets to the head of the dark unorthodox alliance. He is informed that the young lord of the Dang clan bested both in Hu Mag and Yon Sungjang. Xiao Haiyanyo, who leads the Heartfire sect, notes that the pair belonged to their alliance and were famous within the unorthodox world. She proposes annihilating the Dang clan immediately, prior to them recovering their former strength. Nevertheless, Lord Giljin Yu disagrees, when Xiaoyun points out that striking down their own followers is an affront to his command. Giljin's temper flares. He cautions her against touching the Dang clan, arguing they remain valuable. As he stares her down, he releases a powerful pressure that makes Xiaoyun quake with fear. He icily remarks that those idiots acted without his permission and suffered the consequences. Quickly regaining his composure, he observes that falling to the Dang clan's master was a kinder fate. Then, enduring his own rage, with a grin, he admits the protagonist is intriguing for taking those two out. He then instructs his sentries to deliver an invitation to the Dang clan's young master for the approaching Sacheon feast. Inside Jaihe's quarters, Yon Myung commends his mother for her flawless service to the family. She, however, expresses doubt regarding her effectiveness, given how long it has been since she managed clan business. Just then, he realizes his mother is once more concealing her inner power. Jai is taken aback that her son picked up on it. Privately, our protagonist confesses that he could only just barely perceive it this time. He questions the necessity of masking such power after achieving a transcendent state. In response, Jaihe explains she isn't merely suppressing her ability. She is employing a confidential family method known as hidden energy presence. She advises him to employ the method as well, though he is puzzled because he finds no immediate purpose for it. His mother then starts recounting a tale regarding a forebear of theirs, inaugural fire wielder from the Dang family. In his era, a horrific epidemic ravaged a single clan settlement in Sacheon. Despite having plenty to eat, the residents seemed incredibly frail. Since burials were no longer performed, corpses were incinerated to halt the contagion's progress. As a result, the sickness nearly decimated the entire community, leaving only a 10-year-old child behind. This boy showed no symptoms, and the sole conclusion the locals could reach was that he was the source of the blight. He was quickly banished from the area, eventually finding refuge in a cavern during a tempest. He managed to live by consuming the remaining offerings left for the deities by the townspeople. He stayed isolated in this manner for 2 days. By the 3rd day, however, no one came to the shrine. Every inhabitant had perished, leaving the boy as the solitary survivor. He questioned why he was the only person the pestilence had spared. Shortly thereafter, an enigmatic organization approached him due to his natural resistance to toxin. This collective was the most infamous league of killers in martial arts lore. Moonshido Poison Assassin. This sect abducted numerous youths from all over the land to mold them into killers, mandating they ingest toxic pellets that needed frequent cures, ensuring they could never flee. While Maturing into a slayer, he stumbled upon the corpse of a fellow trainee who missed their scheduled remedy. It was then he understood that this murderous organization had triggered the epidemic that ruined his birthplace. Following this revelation, he strove relentlessly to increase his power, taking on and finishing every grueling assignment. In time, he managed to slay a legendary Grandmaster combatant. The chief then designated him as one of the 5 elite slayers and promised to fulfill any request. However, the youth simply stated that he had no needs. Immediately afterward, he began slaughtering the entire organization, reaching a superior state of being during the massacre. By combining the insights from his duels with legendary fighters and the skills learned at the guild, he developed a supreme move known as the Million Flower Deluge. Using this power, he eradicated the Munchido poison assassins in a single evening. The current Dang family was established once that young man's progeny settled within the Sakyeon region. Today, that figure is celebrated as the guest without a shadow. Noticing her child has drifted off, Jihai gives his face a little squeeze to rouse him. Yeonmyeong grumbles that he was unaware of his family. Fascinating past. Even so, he inquires how their lineage's roots relate to the art of concealed presence. His mother clarifies that, along with the 5 premier slayers and the leader, the group boasted numerous transcendent masters, then challenges him to figure out how the shadowless guest defeated them single-handedly. The lad speculates it was due to the Million Flower Deluge, reasoning that most combatants are unable to block a massive volley of projectiles. She notes his theory is partially correct and confirms the move was employed, though she specifies it relies on aura rather than physical tools. He elaborates that high-level duels are essentially contests of energy, as standard concealed armaments cannot pierce an aura-based defense. Consequently, the hero understands that the quantity of weapons is irrelevant, since they would simply deflect off the protective energy shield. Conversely, the Dang family's formidable method, a storm of aura-charged projectiles, was engineered precisely to overcome transcendent foes. He also observes that neither the star-spinning dance nor the iron shrapnel technique holds a candle to its strength, adding that even elite masters find it taxing to sustain such a feat. To his surprise, Jae-hee spots the protagonist questioning the feasibility of this. She clarifies that the hidden energy presence skill holds the solution. Executing this maneuver involves gathering all the inner force moving through one's system and funneling it into one of the 12 primary pathways. Next, the practitioner uses their foundational power to obstruct the flow and lock that specific channel, trapping the energy inside. Even those who have reached transcendence can be misled by this tactic. Though it causes a temporary dip in power, skilled and awakened individuals can readily restore their reserves by iterating this 12 times to shut off every internal meridian. The essential power shielding the inner force converges into a novel defensive layer referred to as aura body armor. Jahai points out that the dragon scale variant is more resilient than typical aura armor, living up to its title with the durability of a dragon's skin. Yan Myung remarks on how, much like the fire dragon's venomous breath, it is frequently likened to the creature. His mother then explains that blocking these meridians provides more than just physical defense. If all 12 are unsealed at the same time, one can momentarily exert 10 times their usual internal power. Upon the hero's inquiry about whether the rain of a million flowers necessitates opening every channel, she clarifies that more is required. She explains that crucial scriptures were once part of the hidden energy method, but these were destroyed in the war with the demons of the vast heavens. Even the spoken teachings were lost forever following the passing of 2 high-ranking elders. Nonetheless, Jae-hee is certain her son will eventually achieve mastery, given that he is her pride and joy. Our protagonist agrees, convinced that the son of the poisonous phoenix can overcome any challenge. Shortly thereafter, Yeon Myung masters the technique for masking his aura from his mother. While at his desk, he concludes that consuming toxins is the most efficient way to replenish his inner strength once it has been locked. While others view it as venom, he considers it a restorative tonic. He resolves to ask Ajun to prepare a toxic mixture for him. The guard's rapping at the door disrupts his focus. The sentry reports that an urgent visitor wishes to see the young master. Suddenly, Mirio rushes in, pleading for our protagonist's help. He asks what the trouble is, and she suddenly cries out that her sibling's life is fading. Yeon Myung promptly suggests that Mirio take her sister to the medical pavilion. Mirio weeps, however, stating they have already visited several times. It seems her sister's ailment is not something that can be cured with standard medicine. As our protagonist speculates if it might be a physical trauma, Mirio clarifies that it is actually an obstruction within the 9 yin meridian. Actually, the North Sea Ice Palace utilizes energy obstructions in their techniques, much like the Blazing Sun Palace. Members of the Ice Palace practiced cryo-based arts, which was seen as a divine gift for those born with yin essence. While walking, our lead and Mirio discuss how individuals who do not train in ice arts slowly suffer from meridian blockages. He inquires whether she and her sibling are of North Sea ice lineage. She confirms this with a nod, though she clarifies they are not from the primary bloodline. In the distant past, Ice Palace heirs moved to Sacheon and integrated into the Dang family. It is rumored that such blockages are curable through ice cultivation. Yet, the Dang clan focuses exclusively on the study of toxins and concealed armaments. As a result, all traces of ice-based combat have vanished from this place, with the ancient methods of their forebears forgotten ages ago. Today, this energy obstruction resurfaces periodically like a hereditary ailment, and Mirio's sister is the one currently afflicted. Just as Yeonmyeong prepares to speak, Mirio mentions they've reached her residence. Once indoors, it's clear her sibling's health has deteriorated further. Her body is starting to ice over, her lids are shut, and she cannot be roused. The lead character observes that the frigid power is even causing the temperature in the room to plummet. Facing a tearful Mirio, he admits he can offer no certainties given the severity of the situation. He clarifies that the girl seems to have redirected her internal essence to seal her pathways in an attempt to combat the frost. However, she has reached her breaking point. In a final effort, she has lapsed into a coma to concentrate entirely on containing the energy. Through her tears, Mirio pleads to know if any solution exists. After a brief silence, our protagonist discloses a potential remedy. They could attempt to drive out the icy chill using outside pressure, though the danger is significant. The procedure might prove fatal for her sister, and he risks being consumed by the freezing power as well. Mirio visualizes the peril, paralyzed by her anxiety. And Mayung scowls, hoping for a better chance of success. Nevertheless, he understands that he cannot act impulsively when his companion's sibling's life hangs in the balance. At this point, the choice rests solely with Mirio. He asks her to decide whether to seek an alternative or proceed with his plan. Gasping for air, she remarks that they come to this point because no other paths remain. Filled with sorrow, she declares she won't abandon her sister without a fight. Acknowledging the danger she's placing him in, she implores him to rescue her sibling. Subsequently, the main character starts removing the clothing of Mirio's sister, causing Mirio to ask if this is truly required. Feeling self-conscious, he explains that her attire would only obstruct the withdrawal of the freezing energy. Asserts that enduring some shame is far better than dying. He then initiates the treatment. In his head, Yan Mayung contemplates the 9 yin channels, realizing the midpoint of the brow is not a significant problem. He proceeds toward the cardiac region. A brief sense of awkwardness washes over him, yet the frigid power refuses to be drawn out, causing one side of his frame to turn to ice. As Mirio voices her alarm, Yeonmyeong comforts her, stating he is holding on for the moment. He observes that while he has successfully cleared the icy force from 6 pathways, his physical form is nearing its breaking point due to the intense chill he's taking in. If this persists, he realizes he will perish from the frost. He whispers that the situation would be far simpler if he were facing a toxin. Suddenly, a realization strikes him. He remembers the words of Mirio grandfather regarding the origin of venom within the celestial spheres, noting that healing remedies and lethal toxins share a common source. Once a material surpasses what a person can endure, it transforms into a pollutant. The protagonist understands that even vital yang energy turns into a fiery toxin when it goes beyond safe thresholds. Consequently, he views the piercingly cold essence as a form of ice venom. Without delay, he triggers the azure pool of poison lust. It starts responding after a brief interval. Even though the freezing power might fight against being pulled out at first, it will no longer be dangerous once it is categorized as a toxin. Consequently, his icy half starts to melt, and the azure pool successfully siphons off the entirety of the frigid energy. As the chill departs and her temperature rises, Miso gradually unseals her eyes and abruptly lets out a cry. Upon seeing Mirio, the pair of sisters burst into tears and hold one another tightly. Mirio recounts the recent events to Miso, leading Miso to believe she is indebted to Yeonmyeong for her survival. Even though Mirio is worried about why the young master continues to maintain physical contact with her sibling, Miso notes that his concentration remains unbroken and advises that they should be patient. In the meantime, within Miso's frame, our hero notices that this particular power resembles a potent tonic. Physical form is unable to contain the surplus power. Knowing the remainder will dissipate, he chooses to take in the maximum amount of frigid force to test the concealed energy manifestation method. He questions the number of pathways he can successfully saturate. Upon opening his eyes shortly after, he is shocked to find that 4 have been occupied. Consequently, his reserves are now quadruple what he expended, leading him to contemplate his depleted state and the possibility of using toxins for regulation. A wave of shame breaks his concentration when he notices his hand is still on Miso. He pulls away anxiously. Miso remains composed, explaining that Mirio informed her of the situation and offers her gratitude, to which he responds that he was simply fulfilling his obligations as the young master. Suddenly, Miso's father charges in, becoming enraged at the sight of his unclothed daughter. He fiercely questions the boy's intention, though his children immediately attempt to soothe his temper. Afterward, the father offers Yeonmyeong a heartfelt apology, bowing many times while pleading for his pardon. The protagonist expresses full understanding, admitting the scene was prone to misinterpretation. Weeping, the father declares his immense appreciation for the extension of his daughter's life. While working as a trader, he encountered his spouse and decided to join the Dang family. Tragically, she succumbed to the same internal obstruction. He exhausted his wealth seeking a remedy for his girls, yet his search was fruitless. Through tears, he thanks the youth for rescuing his kin, promising his absolute loyalty. Yeonmyeong insists he merely performed a necessary task. Later, he remarks on the unusual silence surrounding the merchant association. Miso's father clarifies that since the downfall of both the Dang lineage and the Dark Unorthodox Alliance, they have ceased traveling beyond the urban boundary. As a result, the young master offers a bow, proposing they postpone their talk due to his other commitments. Just as he prepares to depart, Mirio and Miso arrive, noting that they still owe him a formal expression of gratitude. Miso, currently dressed in a stunning gown, conveys her sincere thanks for his life-saving help. The main character turns red before making his exit. Nevertheless, Miso feels concerned about his well-being, observing that he seems somewhat out of it. She questions Mirio on whether the young master might have sustained an injury while clearing her internal obstruction. Mirio, however, mocks her playfully, inquiring if his departure has left her feeling downcast. Flustered and startled, Miso asks if her feelings were so apparent. Upon seeing Mirio nod, Miso hides her face in shame. Yeonmyeong strokes her hair, remarking that such a reaction is natural, and mentions that her sibling is the most beautiful woman she has ever encountered. Mirio smiles, reflecting on how Yeonmyeong's expression mirrored Miso's when they locked eyes. This leads her to believe that his attraction is just as strong as her sister. Meantime, while returning, the youth contemplates domestic life. He envisions building a future with Miso, raising a son, teaching him martial arts, and one day seeing him wed and having grandkids. He turns crimson, aware that he even pictured his own grandchildren. Grinning, he finds it surprising to harbor such emotions for another person, attributing it to his desire for a conventional existence. He looks forward to their next meeting. Yet, he remembers the concern brought up by Miso's father. His thoughts shift to Giljun Yu, the leader of the Dark Unorthodox Coalition. While he wasn't a primary architect of the clan's ruin like the vast heavens demon lord, a danger persists, as evidenced by the events of the heir selection. The protagonist realizes that as long as they both occupy Sashin, friction is inevitable. Within the Heartfire sect, located in the Sashin region controlled by the Dark Unorthodox Coalition, Seolyun is informed that the Dang clan's influence is expanding quickly. Munching on an apple, she largely ignores the briefing. Her mind drifts back to Giljun's icy caution regarding avoiding the Dang clan. She also thinks of Inji Yob, the head of the Chabung sect, who advised patience until their master's rage cooled. Overwhelmed by irritation, Seoyun hurls her fruit at the messenger. Incensed that she is urged to remain idle while the Dang clan's successor and current head have both achieved transcendence. Gnawing on her fingernails, she feels stifled by her inability to retaliate for Inhu Mat. And Yansang Zhang, she stops abruptly, remembering her master's command to extend an invitation to the Dang clan's heir for the approaching Sachian feast. A grin spreads across her face as she realizes the event offers a perfect opening. Acknowledging that patience is not her forte, she mentions that each time she rests, who haunts her sleep, demanding vengeance. With growing fervor, she resolves to wipe out every single Dang clan member to finally find peace. Casting a lethal stare at the informant, she incinerates him instantly, deaf to his begging. Inhu then vows to arrange a truly memorable reception for our protagonist. During a gathering, the ex-commander of the Poison Lord squad, Jai Hayak, inquires about the second elder's strategy. The elder confesses that their losses have been immense since Jai He Dang took control. Yet he wonders why Jai Hayak seeks his counsel, noting that the current crisis stems from the choices made by him and his offspring. Gesturing toward Munchin, he demands to know why he challenged a far superior opponent, blaming both Munchin and Jai Hayak for destroying his lifelong achievements. All the while, Munchin's temper flares at the second elder's disrespectful tone in the presence of their leader. Under his breath, he damns Yeonmyeong, promising to get even as soon as his limb recovers. Following this, Jihyuk asks his query once more, mentioning the difficulty of keeping their personal squads operational. Reacting to this, the second elder grips his hand tightly and asserts that their only option is to desert the sect. The following morning, the protagonist is led toward the Chamber of Supreme Venom, the storage site for the Dane family's 10 primary toxins and various lethal substances. He remembers that oversight of the venom repository belonged to the third elder prior to his removal. Currently, management is shared between him and the Dark Poison Pavilion. Sentries at the doorway offer a polite welcome to their young master. Prior to his entry, a watchman provides Yeonmyeong with an antitoxin bead designed to shield him from the contaminated atmosphere within. The purpose of the sphere is to strain out the majority of pollutants when held in the mouth. To the guard's shock, our lead character declines the item, claiming it is unnecessary. Yeonmyeong declines with a head shake, noting that numerous individuals, the third elder among them, likely used the bead, despite the sentry's assurance that the object is sanitized after every use in that hour. Champion ought to utilize it regardless of his resistance. The boy strikes the guard, sending him and the bead to the floor. Subsequently, Yeonmyeong enters the chamber. He notices the excellent upkeep of the facility housing the 10 legendary toxins. He now recognizes why the guard was worried. An ordinary martial artist would perish immediately upon entering. Although his internal power is restricted by the concealed aura method, the environment remains fatal. Yet, thanks to his proficiency in the azure pool of venomous desire, navigating the room is effortless. He breathes in the noxious fumes, relishing the experience like a therapeutic treatment, and senses his inner strength growing, even if it falls short of a complete recovery. Consequently, the optimal approach would be consuming a toxin as lethal as the 10 poisons. However, he recalls that clan regulations prohibit their use for individual purposes. This leads him to consider that he might have requested the formula from Ijan. Suddenly, he detects an anomaly. The atmosphere around him appears warped. Upon closer inspection, he identifies it as a deceptive ward. Questions why such a shield would exist in their venom cellar, especially one deviating from the Jiggle clan's style. Seeing no other choice, he uses his skills to pierce the veil and finds a hidden doorway before him. The route is lined with paper charms for containment and protection. Yeonmyeong instantly realizes these were not created by the Jiggle clan. Rather, they are the work of occult experts. In his former life, his mentor was acquainted with a few of them. These people were fixated on the arcane, just as his teacher was devoted to the sword. Specifically, these sorcerers aimed for eternal life through the mastery of magic. Our protagonist remembers when his teacher cast him into their hallucinatory zones for training, where he met entities unlike anything he had ever witnessed. He is certain that these mystics only participate in affairs that fascinate them. Thus, he cannot understand why they would place their barricade within the poison repository. Previously, Yeonmyeong's mentor disclosed that these practitioners are egoists, dedicating themselves to spirits and phantoms in pursuit of immortality. He informed the boy that he established rapport with them by pummeling them daily until they cooperated. Now, our hero thinks there will never be another person quite like his master, who utilized such bizarre ways to build friendships. This suggests the Dang clan holds something that piqued their curiosity. As Yeonmyeong looks closer, he spots an object so lethal that fatal vapors are escaping from it. Despite the presence of countless charms meant to restrain it, a smile crosses his face as he realizes that although his first goal was the 10 poisons formula, he has stumbled upon something much more fascinating. Thus, he moves down the hallway to explore. At the same time, an entity within detects a trespasser. Noting that this is not the visitor without a shadow, they reflect on the passage of time. Yet their primary concern is simply being liberated by the young man. Within the chamber, Yan Myung discovers the 10th toxin, previously believed to be extinct. The vessel holding the venom is shrouded. Mystical seal. As he extends his hand, questioning what sort of venom would necessitate such intense precautions, a protective barrier halts his progress. Observing the potency of the enchantment, he understands that breaking it will require a great deal of work. With resolve, he focuses his energy to sever the charms individually, intending to also strip away the ones attached to the container itself. He expertly cuts through every seal, dabbing his brow while acknowledging that his stealth technique has depleted his stamina. Under ordinary circumstances, this task would have been much quicker. As the seals drop, the toxic atmosphere intensifies. Resting his palm on the jar, he readies himself to witness the contents. Simultaneously, a dark entity inside the vessel feels the shackles disappear. It suddenly glimpses the light. A fierce blast occurs, knocking the protagonist back. Prior to his reaction, a limb resembling a tentacle lunges toward him. He tries to grasp it by instinct before it can strike, yet it manages to snag his forearm. Dark Spirit commends his agility but promises a merciful end as a reward for its release. When Yeonmyeong inquires about its identity, the being declares itself the blue-horned white serpent, identifying as the ultimate form of poison. It dawns on Yeonmyeong that he is facing the embodiment of goo poison. Acknowledging his skill, the whitesnake concedes that obstructing the shoulder's energy flow was a remarkable feat. But it wonders how much longer he can endure. The goo poison incarnate mockingly asserts that his limb will soon dissolve. Its arrogance vanishes, however, upon witnessing the poison lust, consuming every bit of toxic vapor. Stricken with fear, the white serpent inquires about his connection to the shadowless guest. Clenching the reptile firmly, our lead character discloses his lineage as its successor. In a state of panic, the creature begs him to cease the venomous intake, fearing its total annihilation. Still, an incensed Yeon Myung increases his grip, determined to drain every drop of its toxin. As the extraction commences, the frantic white snake desperately suggests a bargain. The young man halts briefly to listen to the serpent's clarification. The creature claims its sole desire is freedom from its confinement, vowing to serve as his familiar if its life is preserved. This piques Yeonmyeong's curiosity. Encouraged, the snake assures him that placing his faith in it will yield no regrets. It points out that its venomous essence will significantly boost his power. Internally, our hero concurs, reflecting that neither the fire dragon's respiration nor the fire carp's pearl possessed such strength. Taken power instantly surpasses his existing internal reserves. Subsequently, the whitesnake declares its ability to provide him with an infinite supply of toxic force, and naively inquires if that path would serve him better or if consuming the entire power source immediately is preferable. Nevertheless, the protagonist declines, stating that sparing a danger is unwise and noting that toxins are available in other places. Crying, the pale serpent clarifies that its only activity has been gazing at the enclosure, since it remained trapped in that vessel for many years. Adopting a charming and harmless expression, the creature maintains that defiance will be impossible once their bond is formed. Following a brief hesitation, Yeonmyeong chooses to believe it, though he cautions that any suspicious behavior will result in its immediate destruction. Reptile quickly agrees. Subsequently, the youth questions the process of taming it, confessing his ignorance of the occult. The serpent begins radiating power, manifesting a spiritual filament, clarifying that grasping it will unite their spirits, turning the snake into his servant. Consequently, Yeonmyeong takes hold of the soul strand. In the meantime, the sentries outdoors debate the duration of their master's stay. They grow anxious, speculating whether some misfortune has befallen him. A guard proposes entering, yet his partner points out the ban on accessing the treasury. Even so, the fit guard places the defensive sphere in his mouth, remarking that while penalties might follow, protecting the heir to the family is their priority. Just as they prepare to act, a brilliant glow emanates from the chamber and the earth trembles. The entrance swings wide, and a concerned watchman checks on the boy's well-being as his companion notices him glowing. Afterward, Yeonmyeong realizes he can trigger the dragon scale aura armor. This version feels like physical plate rather than standard aura body armor. A grin forms on his face as he remembers completing all 12 spiritual pathways after bonding with the white serpent. Nevertheless, the main character intends to better regulate his power in the presence of others, since he has already drawn significant notice during his return. Suddenly, the white snake emerges, questioning why Yeonmyeong cares about public perception. Considering the shadowless visitor never hid his own strength, dismissing the remark, our lead tosses the serpent aside and tells it to remain out of sight. Wincing, the white snake explains that it only becomes visible when it chooses to be. It further notes that such an intense aura will surely keep his foes at bay. However, Yeonmyeong finds it excessive, given his goal of leading an ordinary life this go-around. Catching that specific phrase, the white snake remarks that he sounds as if he's on a second lifetime, and consequently, expresses skepticism about him ever being normal. When the young master asks for clarification, the serpent claims that immense strength always serves a purpose. It mentions that the shadowless visitor, its former owner, faced the same reality, as destiny governs the powerful. Yeonmyeong grins, noting that his forebear managed to keep it in check. Annoyed, the white snake warns him not to bring that up. It discloses that its old master treated it like a slave before having a sorcerer trap it in a vessel out of fear. While the serpent seethes over its history, the hero contemplates the situation, finally grasping the reason for the sorcerer's involvement. The white serpent is truly a legendary entity from a superior dimension. Yeonmyeong is currently puzzled as to why the spiritual adepts didn't seek to possess it, instead aided his forefather in binding it. He speculates whether his predecessor shared qualities with its former owner. Furthermore, he ponders if his unique nature was predestined, perhaps linked to a previous incarnation. Suddenly, a sentry rushes inside with a critical update. The young master swiftly conceals the pale serpent and inquires about the situation. The soldier explains that the route connecting Sashin to their family is swarming with fighters from the dark faction. In another location, Hyunso gasps for air because he and his uncle have been intercepted. The opposing commander ridicules the Gongdong sect's experts and demands to know their business, claiming that Sashin is strictly under the control of the wicked unorthodox group. A badly wounded Taehyo urges Hyunso to flee and abandon him. Nevertheless, Hyunso objects, arguing that he is unable to face the entire group by himself. To himself, Hyunso observes that hundreds of rogue combatants are present, led by the head of Mokgyeong Palace, Tichin Jang, and considering Taehyo's internal damage, he has no hope of winning. Tichin remarks that they likely arrived to request assistance from the Dang family. However, he boastfully declares that the Dang clan has been cut off since their latest ruler assumed control of Sashin. He chuckles derisively, mentioning that his master will surely compensate him for delivering the pair. While he intends to spare their lives, they will certainly lose some body parts in the process. In the meantime, Yeonmyeong reaches the area, led by his protector. Our protagonist asks about the identity of those individuals, and his attendants explain they belong to the Gongdong sect. He deduces that the opposing group belongs to the evil cults. Subsequently, he instructs his protectors to aid the pair from the Gongdong faction. Watching from afar, Hyunso recognizes that the Dang family has arrived to provide support. However, their limited numbers concern him, given they are up against hundreds of foes. The main character advances, and noticing Taehyo's weakened state, he commands his subordinate to help. A sentry shows up immediately to prop up Taehyo, leaving Hyunso shocked to receive aid from anyone besides their master. The warriors give a gentle grin while Hyunso, remaining anxious, mentions that no fewer than 200 attackers are pursuing them. A soldier comforts him, advising that if he has doubts, he should simply observe the outcome. Tichin then questions the youth's identity, and a follower clarifies that he is the survivor of the Dang clan's heir recruitment trial, who rose to become the young master. Taekyon begins ridiculing the hero, labeling him a dandy and telling him to appreciate the leniency their leader granted his family. Since they have overstepped, Taekyon declares he'll give them a stern warning. Yet, mid-sentence, Tichin collapses from his mount, baffling his subordinates. Meanwhile, a composed Yeonmyeong picks at his ear, irritated by Tichin's long-winded tirade. Tichin's followers and Hyunso are equally perplexed. At last, our protagonist boldly informs the adversaries to attempt their lecture, though he asserts that he will be the one wiping them out. The cultist troops gaze at their leader, wondering if he has actually perished. Subordinate spots a toxic dart lodged in his leader's skull, questioning when Yeonmyeong managed to toss it. A second man notes that the main character's arm didn't even appear to shift. Without delay, the protagonist produces a cluster of darts and hurls them toward the opposing forces. The troops are hit in rapid succession by the projectiles before they can respond as he executes his special skill. In the meantime, the young master observes that despite not applying any toxins to the darts, the foes are exhibiting identical reactions. Just then, the white serpent clarifies that his venomous aura has permeated the metal, and ordinary people are unable to endure a toxin of such intensity. Yeonmyeong grins, conceding that the serpent has actually been of some help, an admission that naturally irritates the creature. Across the way, Hyunso clenches his jaw, stunned to see such a deadly concealed armament method. He begins to speculate whether Yeonmyeong was responsible for defeating the whole Taeil Black Sword group. At the same time, the surviving rogue warriors grasp that the lead character has eliminated hundreds of their ranks with just one strike. They find it hard to believe, having been told the Dang family was nearing its end. They are now confronting a lethal beast. Clinging to his hatchet, one fighter assumes the protagonist must be exhausted after performing such a feat, provided he isn't a transcendent expert. Driven by this thought, he rushes ahead, intent on slaying Yeonmyeong and screaming for his demise while swinging his blade. Nevertheless, the young master destroys the axe using only his hand, expertly utilizing his dragon scale ability. Stunned by the effortless shattering of his weapon, the opposing warrior freezes in disbelief. Seizing the moment, the hero instantly triggers the floral deluge technique, further bewildering his foes. Simultaneously, Hyunso realizes that the whispers regarding the Dang family losing their hidden arts were entirely false. He privately acknowledges their enduring strength, noting their genuine ability to confront the dark faction. These reflections are cut short as Yeonmyeong spots him standing there. A hint of anxiety, Hyunso stammers that the display of skill was simply too captivating to ignore. Yeonmyeong then proposes heading back to the Dang estate to review the recent events. Agreeing to the plan, Hyunso surveys the grim scene of the defeated cultists and concludes that staying on friendly terms with the Dang family is a wise move. Recalling an event from several days prior, Hyunso had expressed his relief to his elder for their smooth arrival just outside the gates of Sakyeon. Gossip suggested the Dang clan's decline. The atmosphere appeared calm, yet his uncle remained inexplicably on edge. Abruptly, a hatted figure approached, inquiring about the food they had consumed. Having failed to detect the newcomer, Hyunso quickly realized this was no common martial artist. He was visibly startled when his uncle identified the individual as Giljun Yu. Doffing his headwear, Giljun apologized for any intrusion before questioning their purpose in Sakyeon. Hyunso grew visibly nervous, stunned to be face-to-face with the leader of the evil alliance. Addressing Taeho, Giljun inquired about their intentions toward his group, remarking that a man of such high standing wouldn't be dispatched for a trivial task. Conversely, Taeho gave a frigid response, stating they shared no common interests with the dark unorthodox alliance and asking about Giljun's solitary presence. Giljun retorted by asking if they presumed victory was possible just because he lacked backup. This caused Taeho some agitation, noting that he was twice as old as Giljun. However, Gongdong merely inquired if Taeho planned to treat him with the proper deference, while radiating his energy. Taeho remarked that internal power reserves are vital when masters clash. He then challenged Giljun's confidence in facing the Gongdong sect's methods. At the same time, Taeho watched in shock as his uncle was goaded. Fearing an immediate confrontation, Giljun then labeled Taeho as conceited, pointing out that he had wiped out the other factions a decade prior. He claimed the Gongdong sect only survived because they were located so far from Sakyeon. As Giljun departed, he suggested that if Taeho remained delusional, he should seek him out for a brief duel. Hyunso tried to soothe Taeho right away, yet his uncle refused to let the matter drop. Thus, he rose, intent on challenging Giljun to demonstrate the true power of his style. Back in the current moment, Hyunso clarifies that this led to his uncle's match against the leader of the unorthodox alliance. To Yeonmyeong, though, this sounded like more than just a practice bout. Hyunso further noted they were pursued later, describing Giljun as a nightmare. The fight had progressed with the two trading blows so rapidly that Hyunso's eyes couldn't follow. Taeho managed a heavy hit, yet Giljun mocked it as being subpar. Angered, Taeho clenched his jaw and started channeling the full force of the demon quelling blade style. Observing from below, Hyunso believed his uncle was winning until he noticed Giljun's grin as he parried at the final moment. Resolute, Taeho prepared to unleash his final secret technique. Meanwhile, Giljun beamed, eager to see the move's maximum potential. After a massive blast, Hyunso was amazed to witness his uncle's supreme strike. Once the dust settled, Taeho declared his victory over Giljun. However, before any celebration could occur, Biljun stepped out of the dust cloud completely unscathed. Taehyo and Hyunso were both stunned to see him without a single injury. Giljun remarked that such skill was expected from a member of the 9 major sects, acknowledging it as a combat style that truly mastered the use of aura. Hyunso found it hard to believe that Giljun had endured the strike. Consequently, Taehyo quickly shoved Hyunso out of the way just as Giljun launched his own move, which he called the divine method of righteous suppression. Yeonmyeong seeks to verify if Giljun actually employed the Kangtong sect's martial arts. In response, Hyunso explains that it was a customized variation of their own technique. While the essence was different, it followed the same principles as the ultimate realization of the demon-quelling sword style, yet its potency had actually surpassed the original. Had Taehyo not intercepted the blow at that moment, using his remaining inner strength, Hyunso would not have survived. Following this, our protagonist becomes lost in thought, recalling that Taehyo was a master who had reached transcendence. Yet the most startling part is that Giljun mastered and altered the skill after seeing it only once, meaning he decoded the secret arts of a high-level expert during a single engagement. Afterward, Hyunso bows respectfully and informs the young man that he and his elder traveled here for a specific objective. He humbly requests the Dang clan's assistance for their sect in the looming intersect conflict. He then describes the demonic cult, a militant religious group centered in Shingon. In earlier times, the cult was formidable enough to wage war against all 9 great sects and every martial family at once. Despite many changes over time, the orthodox sects have never managed to restrain them because the entire organization obeys the commands of just one person, the leader of the demonic cult. Eventually, things shifted with the arrival of Jung Hyuk-yeon, the cult leader's offspring. His divine physical constitution drew a large following, leading him to depart from the original sect with his disciples to establish a separate organization, known as the Demons of Vast Heavens, preventing the old cult from splitting internally. Hyunso clarifies that this presents the perfect opportunity to launch an assault on the demonic sect, since numerous elite fighters departed alongside Jungya. Nevertheless, the sinister unorthodox alliance remains their primary hurdle. Should that coalition strike the Gangdong sect while its defenders are absent, it would be disastrous. He further mentions that, having witnessed the young master's strength, he believes the boy can deter the alliance from their territory. Consequently, Hyunso humbly petitions our lead for assistance. To his surprise, the hero gives an immediate refusal, leaving Hyunso bewildered. The young man reiterates once more that he has no desire to participate. Afterward, Taehyo learns of the young master's rejection, and Hyunso notes that Yeonmyeong intends to speak with their family head before reaching a definitive conclusion. Hyunso questions his elder about the consequences of Yeonmyeong's potential disagreement, to which his uncle advises patience. Hyunso then remarks that the Dang clan appears far removed from the descriptions they receive. He elaborates that his first-hand observations of the Dang clan, considering their architecture, the strength of their combatants, and the general vibe, contradict the stories. Regarding their downfall, Taehyo assumes the Dang clan managed to rebuild following their decline. Their talk is cut short, however, when Juhyun appears to announce that Yeonmyeong is ready for a meeting. Subsequently, Hyunso and Taehyo are shocked to find Jihi presiding as the Dang clan's head. She greets them, stating that the young master has already briefed her on the situation. Upon meeting her, Taehyo immediately recognizes her status as a transcendent expert. He concludes that she is the driving force behind the Dang clan's newfound energy. Realizes the family has successfully restored its former glory. Once seated, Hyunso describes the dire situation facing the Gongdong sect, requesting the Dang clan's support as fellow members of the Righteous Legion to oppose the alliance and the demon cult. Following a short silence, Jae-hai questions whether her son's stance remains the same. The protagonist confirms his position is unchanged. Hyunso demands an explanation, warning that hesitation will allow the demon cult to plunge the world into turmoil. The young man clarifies that although they share concerns regarding the demon cult, the alliance is a separate issue. He points out that the coalition hasn't mistreated the citizens of Sacheon. While they do charge for security, those funds are allocated appropriately, mirroring the practices of the righteous faction. Essentially, there is no justification for an assault on the alliance. The protagonist's expression hardens as he addresses their involvement with the Righteous Legion. He reminds them that when the unorthodox alliance crushed the other noble groups, and the celestial demons struck their own family, not a single righteous sect, came to their rescue. He acknowledges that every group puts its own interests first. However, he argues it is unfair to frame the battle against the demon cult as a mandatory obligation for the Dang clan. He questions if they truly think the Dang clan is unaware that their sudden urge to combat the cult stems solely from the fact that their own sect is the next target. Tightening his grip, Hyunso silently concedes that Yeonmyoung's assessment is accurate. He reflects on how they preach about the common good yet only take action once the danger arrives at their own doorstep. Quite unexpectedly, Taeho expresses regret for his lack of empathy. He admits that requesting further concessions from the Dang clan was wrong, given their past hardships. Nevertheless, Taeho continues to urge them to reconsider, promising a reward for their cooperation. This causes the young master to relent slightly, as he chooses to acknowledge their request. With a gentle grin, Hyunso proposes debating the size of the force to be dispatched, yet the main character stops him mid-sentence. He declares that his primary concern is the amount of compensation they intend to provide. Afterward, a stunned Hyunso can hardly grasp that they pledged multiple years' worth of the organization's operating costs. Taeho coolly remarks that no price is too high if it ensures the group's survival. Furthermore, Yeonmyoung would only demand such a steep fee if he were certain of success. While Hyunso acknowledges the young master's formidable power, Taeho breaks in, cautioning him against making assumptions, as the hero might actually outmatch the head of the Dang clan. Hyunso counters, however, that Taeho's ability to sense spiritual energy is far too keen to be deceived. Taeho explains that a person could potentially mask their true mastery, even from someone who has reached transcendence. From his vantage point above, the protagonist eavesdrops on their conversation as they depart. He reflects that Taeho probably wouldn't realize if he were employing a technique to conceal his aura. To himself, he confesses that Taeho possesses a more perceptive instinct than he anticipated. Just then, his mother questions his sudden shift in perspective. Certain that financial gain wasn't his only motivation, the hero clarifies that his decision wasn't impulsive. Despite his previous praise for the unorthodox alliance, he remains skeptical of them. His mother notes that Sachin was indeed annihilated. Even after the collapse of the prominent clans, Yeonmyoung agrees but attributes that outcome solely to Giljin-yu. He argues that these groups aren't labeled unorthodox simply for refusing to align with the righteous faction. Instead, they value individual profit above integrity and righteousness. As such, they are essentially no better than common thieves. Though Giljun is presently restraining the deviant factions, their core instinct is to annihilate any rivals. Should Giljin be removed, these rogue groups will utterly demolish Sachin. Jae concedes the point and asks Yeonmyoung for his strategy. With a smirk, our protagonist explains that he intends to preoccupy the alliance so they cannot contemplate a northern move. Yet his mother expresses doubt about whether their family can manage to keep them distracted. At that point, the main character discloses his intent to destabilize them from within. Hai is taken aback upon realizing he plans to enter their base directly, yet she admits it is logical. Our hero offers a quiet assurance, explaining that he will utilize their summons to the Sachin celebration. In contrast to previous years, the gathering has transformed into a tournament for the youth. Thus, the young master has chosen to go merely to scrutinize their true character. If he perceives them as heartless and evil, he will eradicate every last one of them. In the meantime, within a coach near the Dang estate, Changshin warns a girl named Yang Yang against acting rashly. He cautions her that the destiny of their house relies on her behavior. Yang Yang giggles, promising her uncle she will exert every effort to win Yeonmyoung over, regardless of the cost. Ai Jun greets Taeho, delivering potent remedies to assist his healing. Taeho remains in bed while Ajun asks about his internal wounds. Taeho replies cheerfully that his health has improved greatly, remarking that the medicine from his grandfather is truly exceptional. He confesses to being skeptical initially upon learning the remedy blended toxins with healing plants. Nevertheless, it proved exceptionally effective for his inner trauma. Observing Taeho's rapid improvement, Aijun expects his imminent departure back to his order. Aijun offers a kind grin, gratified by the advancement. At the same time, Hyun-so catches a sound from outdoors and inquisitively questions Ijon regarding the disturbance. Aijun clarifies that the Yejul family has arrived, citing their enduring bond with the Dang house. He mentions this connection led them to offer assistance with the clan's successor search. At present, they are looking into setting up a protective illusory boundary outside the family estate. Hyunso is stunned, recognizing the intimacy between the two groups, yet he wonders if the Jagal clan can truly afford such a high price, given that establishing an illusion barrier is quite expensive. Taehyo inquires if the Dang family is footing the entire bill, but Ijan smirks, explaining that the Jagal clan is covering all expenses. He mentions that the Jagal clan has been extremely helpful throughout the entire endeavor. This leaves Hyunso and Yang bewildered, speculating on what influence the Dang clan might have over them. Meanwhile, Yeonjeong's uncle, traveling in the coach, still cannot shake the memory of our protagonist's frighteningly stoic face. Shortly, Yang Young and her uncle prepare to meet Yeon Maya. The uncle questions whether she is truly reliable, but Yang gives him her word, boldly stating she is fully conscious of her own allure while praising her own appearance. Her uncle thinks back to how her mother, his own sibling, was once considered the most stunning woman in all of Hobuk. Consequently, he determines that it will be easy for Yang to captivate our young master. He privately recalls that over a decade ago, the Jagal clan was raided by the demons of vast heavens because of his sister. She saved the family by giving her life, but unable to tolerate the disgrace of being used as a brief amusement. He committed suicide. Now, he vows to himself that he will not permit his clan to endure such a catastrophe again. He believes that if a romantic connection forms between Yang and our hero, the Yeon Mayung clan will survive through the Dang family's assistance. In his heart, he prays for Yang, aware that the clan's destiny depends on her success. Entrance in front of them swings open, and Jihi welcomes them, noting she has heard that the Jagal clan's illusory field was instrumental during their recruitment phase. Yang and her uncle are both taken aback upon meeting Jihai. With a warm grin, Jihai expresses her pleasure regarding their interest in setting up a defensive illusory shield. Hangshin is stunned, questioning if she is truly the young master's mother. He silently concludes that the boy must have inherited his appearance from her. He promptly pays his respects to Jihi, apologizing for his lack of awareness regarding the Dang clan's new leadership. Jihi dismisses the apology, noting that the Jiggle clan was absent during her appointment. He suggests they recover from their travels, for which Changshin offers his sincere gratitude. Jihi then inquires about the girl with him, and he explains she is his niece, visiting to foster a closer bond with the Dang family. He tells his niece to introduce herself, but Yang is blushing deeply, her heart racing at the sight of our hero. Marveling at his striking looks, she immediately decides he would be an ideal spouse. A frantic whisper from Changshin brings Yang back to her senses. She bows, gives her name, and offers her best wishes on Jihi's new role. Jihi accepts graciously, noting the girl's good manners. Predicts she will have many suitors in the near future. Jihi mentions she was also quite sought after in her youth, seeing a reflection of herself in the girl. Yang maintains that Jihi remains stunning, confessing she mistook her for the young master's sibling. Secretly, Yang resolves to win over both the boy and his mother. She views her as a future mother-in-law. Jaehi expresses hope that the two peers will become friends. Yang intentionally makes her eyes well up, claiming her half-brother back home never showed her any affection. When she looks up through her tears to elicit sympathy from our protagonist, she catches him in the middle of a yawn. The girl and her relative are shocked that he's yawning as she recounts her struggles. This is baffling to Yang, as men in her tribe have always pursued her. Consequently, she begins to doubt her own beauty. Conversely, the young master's mind is occupied solely by Miso. Yang balls her hands into fists, stung by the insult of being completely ignored by the protagonist. At the same time, Jihi reprimands the lead character for his lack of courtesy. Yang then pledges to win his heart at any cost. Simultaneously, within Inner Sachian City, the domain of the Dark Unorthodox Alliance, rumors circulate regarding the hero's presence at the Sashin feast. There is skepticism that the various factions will remain passive following his recent action. It appears the Heartfire sect is hosting the event's arrangement during a gathering. Solian clarifies that the initial page of the paperwork details the necessary funding for the feast, while the subsequent pages list the groups and families entering the combat tournament. One of the 6 prominent unorthodox chiefs, Mayang Ilsang, notes that the Chunjin sect was initially slated to organize this year's celebration. However, the Heartfire sect has taken over the responsibility. Xiao Yun responds that she is merely obeying the master's command. A different head chuckles, remarking that their superior rushed off without so much as a glance at Xiao Yun's finding. Another person quips about their master's unrestrained nature, questioning when he will reach maturity. All of a sudden, a youngster rushes into the chamber, calling the men her uncles. The child declares her desire to go to the feast as well. Embracing Myeonggil, she is questioned about her sudden interest given her absence last year. With a laugh, the girl explains she's heard the Dang clan leader will be present, claiming his looks are so striking that any woman would be immediately smitten. Young-il suggests the stories are exaggerated, but the child is indifferent to his skepticism. She resolves to wed him if the tales prove accurate. She naively requests permission to visit him, and Myeongjul relents, aware that she would ignore any refusal to anyone as her choice is already finalized. Meanwhile, Seolian wears a malicious smirk while looking at the girl, having just thought of something. Young-il deduces that nobody possesses the courage to refuse the child of the dark, unorthodox coalition's leader. Mirio brushes Miso's hair, remarking on its soft texture despite her long confinement to bed. During their chat, she mentions being compared to Miso in Yeonmyeong's presence recently. She starts to ask more but shifts focus, playfully probing her sister about her true feelings for the young master. Miso grows flustered as her face reddens, asking why Mirio would bring that up. Mirio smirks, noting she saw Miso's breathing accelerate at the mention of his name. Irritated, Miso questions if Murio's martial arts training is merely intended for monitoring people's respiratory pattern. Murio then cautions her, revealing Yeonmyeong's plan to attend the Sakyeon feast, meaning he will be gone for some time. Miso is worried, pointing out that the Sakyeon Gala is a meeting of the rogue factions and is far too risky. However, Mirio identifies a separate issue. What if he connects with other ladies at the event? She asks if Miso can stand that, leading Miso to look miserable at the thought. Thus, Mirio recommends they go to the celebration themselves. Seizes Miso's hand, brushing off her complaints, and claims her plan will work out. Later, Young asks our protagonist to let her serve as his aide at the banquet. She notes hearing about a contest for dominance over Sashin's future and expresses a desire to see how the event unfolds. With some hesitation, the young man notes that he's permitted to have an assistant and a protector join him, though he emphasizes this trip is strictly business. Deep down, Yang is eager to go along and win over the protagonist's heart. All of a sudden, Mirio enters the room and speaks to him. He glances her way, remarking that he felt her approach. Mirio walks in, clutching her sister's arm and says she has a suggestion. Yet, she stops short when she notices Yang is present. Immediate tension arises between the two as they question each other's identity. At the same time, the young master wonders why Mirio has Miso in tow. Mirio boldly declares their desire to join him at the feast. Feeling slightly puzzled, Yeonmyeong inquires if she's suggesting herself as his guard and Miso as his helper. Giving Miso's shoulder a tap, Mirio agrees, pointing out that he surely requires a pair of aides, and they are the ideal candidates. Yang, meanwhile, is baffled by Mirio's intentions. She also observes that Mirio behaves with a certain familiarity toward the young master. She then eyes Miso, deciding the girl's beauty rivals the clan heads. Inwardly, she frets, worried her own schemes will fall apart if the protagonist chooses her. Their surprise, the youth agrees to Mirio being his guard but rejects Miso, explaining that the assistant role is already pledged to another person. Mirio is incensed, insisting she won't go unless Miso is included, while Yang turns red, speculating if she is the one he meant. The protagonist composedly informs Mirio that he'll seek a different protector if she refuses to attend. Miso begins to weep. Initially, she claims to be okay, but as she cries harder, she confesses her true distress. She continues to maintain that everything is fine. She suggests they shouldn't be angry since the young master has declined her services. At that moment, Mirio gives Yeonmyeong an icy look and insists on speaking with him outdoors. Once outside, Mirio acknowledges the protagonist's brilliance, noting his talent, discernment, and resolve. However, she is baffled by his total lack of intuition regarding the opposite sex. Clenching her jaw, she feels he is unappreciative of the assistance she provides. She questions his refusal to take Miso along, pointing out that she handed him an ideal opportunity to bond, which he is now squandering. Unexpectedly, the main character clarifies that the feast is far too risky, given the unpredictable nature of a confrontation between the youth of the unorthodox faction. He expresses concern for Miso's safety while he and Mirio are distracted, asking who would be held accountable should she sustain any injury. He notes to Mirio that the event takes place within the Dark Unorthodox Alliance's domain and mentions that Miso is still in the process of healing. Therefore, the situation would be overwhelming for her. Mirio eventually gives in and says she will accompany him. This puzzles Yeonmyeong, as she had earlier refused to go if Miso wasn't included. But Mirio shouts at him, admitting she just can't trust him by himself with that alluring lady. As night falls, Changshin starts to fall asleep while clutching some paperwork. The protagonist suddenly shows up, finding him asleep during his shift. Changshin panics, claiming he has already set up the illusory shield and was merely performing some last-minute tweaks. He promises completion by tomorrow night. At that moment, the protagonist starts inspecting the wards with his visual skill. He spots a formidable illusory shield guarding the clan's headquarters. Changshin clarifies that the defenses have been set up around the vital facilities, spanning from the dark poison hall to the executive council. Remembering Yan Myung's 7-day time limit, a tense Changshin notes that he completed the task on schedule and hopes the work meets his expectations. The young man taps him on the shoulder, expressing confidence that he will wrap up the remaining work as intended. Chang Shin looks ready to cry, having anticipated some gratitude. Nevertheless, he gives a nod of agreement. Later, the young master beams, relieved that he can attend the feast without anxiety since the family is safe. He then realizes there is one final matter to address. Consequently, he calls for the fourth elder, Juryong Dang, who manifests before him. The elder confesses his astonishment at being called for a one-on-one meeting. The protagonist then remarks that Juryong earned his rank through superior blade skills, and because he intends to perfect his own swordsmanship, he wishes to speak with him. Looking back to the selection event, the fourth elder admits he has never been able to replicate the sword technique Yeonmyeong displayed then. Acknowledging that the gap in their prowess still amazes him, the youth then candidly states that Juryong would fall in just one strike at his present skill level. This is why he called him, to provide some guidance. This instruction comes with a price. He insists that Juryong pledge his future allegiance to him. He assures the elder that such a chance won't come twice. He then asks, will Juryong change his devotion? As Hyunso and Taehyo get ready to depart, Hyunso expresses his appreciation for the Dang clan's hospitality. Representing the Gongdong sect, he offers heartfelt gratitude for their participation in the mission. Subsequently, Taehyo voices his thanks for the treatment of his inner wounds, promising to come to the Dang clan's aid at any time in the future. Ja graciously acknowledges their thanks and pledges a contingent of troops and senior members to help wipe out the demonic cult. Taehyo vows to remember this kindness forever before shaking hands with Jai Hai, declaring that compensation will be dispatched immediately upon their arrival back home. Next, Taehyo approaches Yan Myung to show appreciation for rescuing them before they were essentially dead. While shaking hands, Taehu comments that the young master will soon exceed his own ability. All at once, he detects a colossal surge of inner power radiating from the youth, causing him to recoil. Hyunso becomes alarmed, noting his elder's sickly appearance, yet Taehyo dismisses the concern with a lie, saying he is merely upset about leaving. Nevertheless, during their return journey, Taehyo reflects that his perception was accurate. He marvels at the boy's extraordinary strength. As a result, he understands that the revival of the Dang clan isn't solely Jihee's doing. It is entirely because of the young lord. In the meantime, Jihee commands her troops to double any kindness received but return any slight 10 times over. He proclaims that the Dang clan's code prioritizes devotion and respect. Having allied themselves with the Gongdong sect, their fates are now intertwined. The entire force, along with various senior leaders, collectively confirms her instructions. With that, Jihye offers her well wishes for their success. Afterward, Jun provides the gut-searing toxin to the protagonist, who expresses his constant appreciation for the help. Nevertheless, Lee Jun wonders why he consistently asks for that specific venom despite the wide variety available to choose. From Yamyoung gives a wry smile, explaining that he has grown accustomed to this particular type and hasn't found a suitable substitute for this. He signals a farewell to Ijan as he gets ready to go, while Ijan offers a kind smile and urges him to return in one piece. Upon the hero's exit, the white snake appears and poses an odd inquiry, asking if he is certain about his youth. Yeonmyeong wants to know the reason for the query, and the white snake explains its confusion over how someone his age can wield such sophisticated combat techniques. It claims it would only find his story credible if he were an elderly expert with a lifetime of practice. Even so, it considers him far below the prowess of the shadowless visitor. Despite acknowledging that the blade technique the protagonist employed against the fourth elder far surpassed the skills of the warrior its previous owner once faced, the young man feels slightly irritated, noting that the coalition leader is a genius capable of mastering any move at a glance, and therefore He must be nothing short of an exceptional talent himself. He dismisses the serpent's inquiries as pointless. Yet, the snake remains suspicious. Shortly after, the protagonist reaches the gate where the rest of the group is gathered. Mirio gestures to him, inquiring about his delay, and Yeonmyeong clarifies that he was obtaining venom from AI June. He then inquires about the individual positioned in the center, offers a bow and welcomes the young master. He identifies himself as Gil Zhang, the guide who will lead them to the heart of the city. Just as the young master is about to show his gratitude, Jae-hee arrives and asks if he is departing. The assembly immediately pays homage to the clan leader, but Jae-hee tells them to set aside the formality. Jae-hee recognizes the gravity of the situation yet promises to back her son regardless of his path, hoping he avoids overexerting himself. Young offers a respectful assurance, claiming he takes after his mother. Jae-hee gives a small laugh, jokingly remarking that he is indeed the proud offspring of the poisonous phoenix. She then charges his companions with her son's protection and offers a heartfelt goodbye. Eventually, the travelers reach the town of Sachin-Hyeonyeong. Mirio remarks on the vibrant energy of the area, noting it was far quieter during her previous visit. Yeonmyeong asks if she has been to this location before. She boastfully explains she came here often while her father ran the Merchant Association. She notes that his organization used to be a major power in Sachin before the unorthodox sects caused its decline. Our protagonist mentions he remembers her father discussing this. Internally, he muses that if their clan is to flourish, they must create their own commercial guild, as they cannot depend on misappropriated wealth. The earnings from the remedy hall indefinitely. Consequently, he tells Mirio to bring her father to see him once this concludes, as he intends to help him regain his status as a guild leader. Mirio is shocked and shouts at him, demanding he not go back on his word later. Meanwhile, a merchant sits in despair because no patrons have arrived. He prays for a customer with a deep appreciation for swords to stop by. Unexpectedly, the group stops at his establishment. Yeonmyeong inquires if the shop is open, mentioning his interest in examining the weaponry. Shopkeeper takes note of their unusual clothing and gives them a cordial welcome, confidently asserting that his blades are the finest in the entire city. Mirio wonders about the necessity of a blade, and the young man explains that he merely felt carrying a weapon would be advantageous. Examining the steel intently, the protagonist realizes the vendor was being truthful, since the edge exhibits superior craftsmanship and a keen presence. He praises the inventory to the seller, and when asked about his knowledge of arms, the youth admits to having some modest expertise. He further notes that despite its modest appearance, the weapon radiates a piercing energy, demonstrating the meticulous care taken during its creation. The shop owner is stunned that the boy could discern such detail so quickly. As a result, the protagonist chooses to purchase the blade, yet the vendor abruptly rushes away, asking for a brief delay. Shortly thereafter, the merchant reappears carrying a wooden container, explaining that he had been holding a particular piece for a true connoisseur of metalwork. Upon opening the lid, the seller presents his masterpiece, the Demon Reaper. Mirio and Yang are both struck by the weapon's incredible power. Even Yang, despite lacking any knowledge of smithing, recognizes its extraordinary caliber. Shopkeeper then shares that his mentor died during the forging process. Consequently, he assumed the task and finished the work on his own. He seeks Yeonmyeong's opinion, convinced that this weapon is a legendary artifact. To himself, the young man concurs with the seller's assessment. Sensing that this blade rivals the one he wielded in his previous existence, he detects the pure spirit of lethality woven into its core. Unexpectedly, he informs the vendor that he will decline the purchase, despite acknowledging the superb artistry. The merchant anxiously wonders if it wasn't what he anticipated. Nevertheless, the protagonist clarifies that the truth is actually the reverse. He encourages the craftsman to take pride in his creation, but explains that its excellence is exactly why he must decline. Even so, he privately reflects that traveling with a blade of that caliber would attract far too much notice, so he merely states that a standard sword is sufficient. He informs the merchant he'll examine the weapon he chose before, and despite the shopkeeper's exasperation, he agrees to the request. All at once, a party enters the store, throwing the owner into a state of alarm upon recognizing young Lord Jan. Fuming, Jan reminds the seller of his demand for the highest quality blade in stock. This individual is Sa Chung-yeon, the successor of the Hunyang sect, who suspects the blacksmith of insolently concealing that specific weapon from him. finds it inconceivable that a simple metalworker would behave this way, prompting the smith to desperately clarify the misunderstanding. At the same time, our hero detects an unusual aura emanating from Yehan's guards and realizes something is amiss. Just then, the white serpent appears, identifying the presence as a malevolent force. It claims to have become familiar with this particular power during its encounter with the shadowless intruder. To himself, the main character acknowledges his prior knowledge of it, yet he questions the presence of cult members in Sashin. The white serpent murmurs that it is also uncertain, though it suggests they could uncover the truth by capturing some for questioning. Jan steps directly before Yan Mayung, ordering him to step aside, since he plans to kill the metalworker and anyone else blocking his way. Surprisingly, our protagonist addresses him as a child and delivers a sharp flick to his brow. The retainers stare in shock while shouting for their master. Following this, our hero comments that Yon is incapable of handling any blade, even the world's greatest, and suggests he spend another 20 years in training before returning. A sentry for Yan draws his weapon, questioning the audacity of striking Jinsun Nam's grandson on the brow. He proclaims that such an insult warrants nothing less than execution. Disregarding the soldier, the protagonist bluntly inquires about their ties to the demonic sect. This question causes Yian's entire party to go rigid with shock. Abruptly, a figure steps out from the crowd, making Yang anxiously speculate about his origin. Simultaneously, Yian and his protectors turn to find a masked individual, who demands to know why they would use such a derogatory term for his order. And security detail rushes to shield their master, yet the stranger wipes out many of them in a single motion. He resolves to abduct Yon, and commands his followers to slaughter the survivors. The masked figure confesses to the protagonist that he is quite struck by how he managed to pierce their veil of shadows, questioning how he detected their presence. In the meantime, the smith and the two young women shake with terror, seeing sect members in the heart of Seichan. Unexpectedly, the young master remarks that overlooking them is impossible given the foul odor of demonic followers. He ridicules the masked stranger, advising him to conceal his hideous features if he truly wants to remain anonymous. Mirio eventually screams at the youth, wondering if he is intentionally baiting such a lethal adversary. The masked assailant then questions if the massacre of the sentries failed to intimidate him, but the protagonist merely grins, asserting that the fear should belong to the cultists instead. He proceeds to take a blade from the smith, labeling the sect members as repulsive as the guards they just dispatched. Enraged, the masked commander instructs his subordinates to seize Yan while he handles Yan Mayung himself. As he is apprehended, Yon cries out in terror, as he is still oblivious to the true nature of his captors. At the same time, the lead character observes that Yon truly failed to detect them, though he acknowledges the lad is not completely blameless. Without warning, the head of the masked group strikes, insisting the protagonist focus. Yet, the hero shatters the enemy's blade in a single blow as a sudden blast occurs. Cult commander lies sprawled on the earth, baffled by his defeat despite his superior speed. As he tries to retaliate, his head rolls away, leaving his followers paralyzed with fear. Mirio, Young, and Lord Yon watch in total disbelief. Standing over the decapitated chief, Yan Mayung acknowledges the weapon in his hand is truly exceptional. He observes its near-flawless weight distribution and its edge, which remains pristine and bloodless due to its extreme sharpness. He informs the smith that this blade is undoubtedly a masterwork. Yan Mayung concedes that the blacksmith's mentor created a marvel and praises the apprentice. Carrying on the craft, these words bring tears to the blacksmith's eyes as he thinks of his teacher. He remembers the old man's wisdom, that every precious object will one day meet its rightful master. At this moment, the smith realizes the demon reaper has finally met its match. Simultaneously, the protagonist is occupied fending off the rest of the cult members as they rush him all at once. Nevertheless, the hero cuts through them with ease using the demon reaper. This display leaves Yon trembling in terror, while the blacksmith watches with profound admiration. Young women are similarly shocked, though Mirio admits her astonishment has faded. She merely questions when the young master acquired such swordsmanship skill. Inside a structure, a figure paces down a hallway, satisfied that his schemes are unfolding perfectly. The green-haired individual reflects that even the unorthodox alliance remains oblivious to his cult heritage. This individual is actually Yujung Yon, the second-born son and son-in-law to Jinsun Nam, the head of the Haiyunyang Gates. He remembers that his child, Seo Kiyung, possesses an innate talent for combat, as any descendant of the Yang family should. This isn't merely a father's pride speaking. reality, none of Sakyang's peers can even hold a candle to him. Tightening his grip, he contemplates how Sachang's display of skill at the approaching feast to earn a spot in the Rogue Alliance will mark the beginning of their downfall. Before they even sense the danger, the dark arts will have taken root in Sakyen. All at once, a wounded individual in a mask bursts inside. Shouting for Lord Yon, Yujung instantly identifies him as a soldier from the Thousand Moons squad guarding Sachyo. The messenger reports that a disguised attacker has struck their young master. At the same time, Yeonmyeong is occupied with dispatching the veiled foes. With the establishment now littered with corpses, Mirio questions who is responsible for the cleanup, remarking that Misa would have lost consciousness at such a sight. She further notes that a survivor fled a moment ago and could potentially come back with backup. Nevertheless, our protagonist admits he allowed the escape intentionally. Aiming his blade at Sachang, he observes that the man is oblivious to his own ties to the demonic sect. He suggests that a benefactor must have employed these guards for his safety. Sachang shouts back in denial, insisting he has no idea who those people were. The young master holds the edge of his sword to the man's throat, causing him to wail in terror. Our lead then states that the arrival of those nearby will soon bring the facts to light. Abruptly, a voice from the street bellows for our hero to emerge. Yujung has reached the shop with his troops, screaming that he is aware the young lord is being held captive. Yujung insists on his freedom and their submission, vowing to let them live if they comply. If not, he screams in a rage that they will become food for beasts. Then the protagonist emerges, stating they are prepared and questioning what Yujung can achieve while Sachang remains his captive. At the same time, Mirio, Young, and the smith watch from the store, questioning which side is actually the antagonist. Mirio clenches her jaw at the sight of the massive enemy force, curious about Young's plan. Woo-young shouts at the young master once more, warning him that he is out of his league. The hero retorts instantly. He mentions detecting a sinister aura emanating from them, a demonic force. He questions if Yujung concealed his true self to bring about Sakyon's downfall, remarking that although the unorthodox alliance might be oblivious now, they won't overlook it once it's revealed. Yujung is shocked that the lead character identified the concealed demonic power so quickly. Further observes that the protagonist is unharmed, despite the fact that the Heavenly Moon Brigade was supposed to have finished him off. Deciding that the hero poses a threat, he commands the unit to activate their reverse blood demonic art. Upon hearing this, Mirio identifies it as the very same method the Great Heaven's Demon Lord employed against the Dane family years ago. While the masked warriors initiate the art, the hero inquires if Woo-young has ties to Jung Hyuk-yeon. Woo-young, however, asks if those are really his final words, pulling his blade back from Sachang. Yeonmyeong explains that he bears no individual ill will toward Yujung, yet points out that Yujung's kin annihilated his. Yujung lets out a derisive laugh, yelling that his brother has laid waste to every family imaginable. He begins to speculate. He mentions the Jiggle and Moyang clans, noting that being in Sachyon implies the Dang family's involvement. With arrogance, he demands to know the protagonist's lineage, promising to annihilate his entire household once he is dead. At the same time, a shiver runs through Mirio and Yang. Just as Mirio prepares to step in, Yang restrains her, arguing that although intervening could be fatal, they have no choice but to rely on the young master right now. Jung commands his troops to kill him, just as the white snake appears to inquire about the protagonist's strategy. Lifting his weapon, the youth questions the necessity of the inquiry, since his only goal is to cut them all down. In a single motion, he wipes them out. The protagonist slaughters every soldier simultaneously. Yujung, the smith, and the young women are rendered mute by the spectacle they just saw. Yujung is unable to comprehend the scene, remembering that 70 fighters had employed the reverse blood demonic art. He concludes that such power should surpass even a peak-level expert. The sensation mirrors his experiences within the cult. He thinks back to the conclusion of the succession ritual, where the left and right protectors suffered severe wounds. Jung Hyuk-yeon had emerged victorious then, returning to the current moment. Woo-young acknowledges to himself that his siblings' strength surpassed the Guardians even at their best. That specific aura had been absent from his life until now, as he recognizes it emanating from Yeonmi. Realizing the battle is over, Yujung drops to his knees and pleads for the hero's leniency. Driven by a desire to protect his child, he declares his willingness to die if it means Sachang is allowed to live. He maintains that his boy is just a typical youth with no knowledge of these affairs. Nevertheless, the protagonist asks with indifference if the demonic cult typically murders blacksmiths simply for refusing to provide a blade. Without warning, Sachung begins insulting the hero, prompting the youth to execute him on the spot. As he watches his son's head roll, Yujung is consumed by fury. At the same time, the lead character points out that this mirrors the suffering of the relatives of those they murdered. He harbors no compassion for Yujung, passionately declaring that he has no interest in dueling anyone associated with the vast heaven demons. Consumed by fury, Yujung begins to shriek, yet paying no mind to the racket. Our protagonist delivers the final blow. Afterward, Yeonmyeong is bewildered when the smith presents him with the demon reaper at no cost. The craftsman explains that his life would have been lost if not for him. Consequently, he is handing over the blade as a present. He further notes that his mentor desired for the weapon to end up with its true master, and he is certain his teacher would approve of this choice. Mirio suggests that Yeonmyeong ought to simply take it without complaint, while Yang offers praise for the new armament. The main character eventually says that if they are all so adamant, he will take it. Mirio chuckles, noting that he intended to take it all along. The protagonist then asks for a more modest scabbard because the blade is too conspicuous, and the smith agrees to the demand. In the meantime, White Snake is unable to comprehend how a Dang clan member possesses such sword mastery. It is impossible to envision the extent of his future strength, potentially even surpassing the shadowless visitor. Within a lengthy queue, various people notice Yeonmyeong's party and start to murmur to one another, remarking that he was the individual spotted with the successors of the Sichuan sect. They see that both his servant and protector are female, which leads them to assume he is a real charmer. Bystander questions why he is present at the feast, while someone else remarks that they can already guess the level of his combat prowess. Moreover, seeing several women peering at him, another observer mentions that their chances were ruined before the event even began. Inwardly, they confess they have never encountered a youth as attractive as Yang in their entire lives. At the gate, receptionists approach Yeonmyeong to ask for his name. The protagonist answers with poise, proclaiming himself the successor of the Sakyeon Dang family. Within the Heartfire sect, Seolyun is told that the Dang clan's young master has finally arrived. Her informant, kneeling before her, explains that the lead character signed in at daybreak and went straight to his room. Seolhyun gnashes her teeth, thinking Yeonmyeong should rest for now, as she intends to dispatch him later to get justice for her brother Matt. Her mind then returns to her history, recalling when she clutched a manual while terrified in the woods. It was in Humag who saved her from a group of bandits. As the mistress of a senior dignitary, Seolyun never lacked for food, but she was merely an object of amusement for the man, who passed away suddenly one day. Aware that he was an avid collector of martial arts volumes, she managed to secure one and fled, hoping for a fresh start. That same day she met Inhu. They became close, and coached her in the fundamentals of combat so she could defend herself. After learning the basics, she began practicing the red lotus blazing fire method from the pilfered book. However, joy was not her destiny, as her health began to wither from an incurable malady. When she realized that her time was running out, unwilling to let him witness her condition, she chose to depart from Inhu's side. As the years passed, news reached her that Inhu had risen to lead the Tai Yul Black Sword clan, whereas she remained bedridden, nearing her end. At times, the constant agony made her long for the release of death. However, her lingering feelings for Inhu prevented her from giving up. Luckily, Inhu eventually arrived, bringing Giljun along with him. Inhu described Seolyun to Giljun as a gifted individual whose life was fading. Giljun noted that her condition stemmed from training in Yang-based martial arts as a female, which caused a fatal conflict between her internal energy and physical nature. He asked her to chant the scriptures of her techniques. Seolhyun complied, completing the recitation in under 10 minutes. Following this, Giljun devised a modified version of the Red Lotus Burning Flame style suitable for women, dubbing it the Neo Red Lotus Burning Flame technique. To show her appreciation for being saved, Seolhyun established the Heartfire sect and entered the alliance. She hoped this move would help reignite her past romance with Inhu. To her dismay, Inhu confessed that his interest in her was purely based on her skill. He had distanced himself further than she anticipated, but she felt unable to fault him since she was the one who initially walked away. Nevertheless, she was determined to make the most of her renewed life. Soon after, word arrived regarding the downfall of the Tai Yul Black Sword clan, prompting her to vow vengeance against the Dang family's successor. Back in the present, Seol-yoon clenches her jaw, consumed by the desire to kill Yeon-myung immediately, though she recognizes he has already attained the initial stage of transcendence. She realizes that her Red Lotus burning flame skill is inadequate to overcome him. Consequently, she has prepared a unique surprise for the festivities, a trap that our young hero will find impossible to evade. In another location, Yeon-myung is deep in meditation. Despite his white snake's persistent attempts to disturb him for 2 hours, he hasn't moved a muscle. Serpent is amazed by such intense concentration in one so young, questioning if he might truly be an elder who has regained his youth. Within his consciousness, our lead character is engaged in combat with a fighter. Following a series of strikes, he executes the annihilation move. Nevertheless, his adversary remains entirely unharmed. This leads the young master to question if the Azure Pool of Poison Lust method is incompatible with Annihilate's peak performance. He thinks back to when he took down 70 enemies at once, realizing that even then, he was only operating at half capacity. Reaching its maximum effectiveness would necessitate the formidable force technique, the same energy-guiding method he utilized in his former life. He determines that he must gain command over it. He wishes to activate Annihilate's complete potential. Still, the formidable force technique is characterized by its highly corrosive properties. Most individuals succumb instantly when trying to use it. Even so, Yeon-myung feels certain he can swiftly return to the level of mastery he held in his prior life. Amidst these reflections, our hero still feels a lingering desire for swordsmanship, though he rejects that direction. Through his current method of channeling energy, he has succeeded in generating the core of annihilation, however faint. He understands its weakness is due to the skill being ill-suited for a blade. Coming back to his senses, Yeon-myung discovers his face has been scribbled on. He orders Mirio to wipe the markings off, prompting a hiccup from her as she holds onto the brush. In a state of alarm, she asks if he truly wasn't resting, which he denies with a shake of his head. In any case, he expects that they are both prepared. Mirio agrees with a firm nod, asserting that they are set. Yet before he can stand, Young asks her peer how much longer she plans to behave so casually with their young master. Miria is annoyed, failing to see why it should be an issue for her. Young retorts, shouting that his reputation will be ruined if his protector behaves that way toward him. Mirio counters by questioning why Yang is so concerned about his public image. Unexpectedly, the main character agrees with Yang, which further frustrates Mirio, who accuses him of favoring Yang's perspective. The young master then explains that this doesn't require them to be cautious with the feeble members of the unorthodox sex, as the opinions of corpses are irrelevant to him. Last, Yeon-myung playfully grabs the brush to retaliate with interest, making Mirio go still. The Sachin feast commences at last, accompanied by musicians establishing the mood. Once the music ends, Seol-hyun approaches to give her opening remarks. She boldly declares that everyone in attendance is well aware of the reason for the Sachin gathering. Thus, she gets right to it, stating that the assembly's goal is to seize the influence of others while risking the loss of one's own. She mentions that the contest involves martial combat and, following custom, lethal duels are allowed. Each contender must record their desire as a wager and endorse the paper. Consequently, the ultimate champion claims all. The triumphant party will command power for a 5-year term, and if any objections occur, she will certify the win in her capacity as the Heartfire sect's head. She cautions that rule breakers will be viewed as betrayers of the alliance and dealt with as such. Having clarified the regulations, Seol-yeon points out the notable guests present at this year's event. One such figure is Master Mayoung-ilsang, famously called the Sword of the Nine Illusions. The crowd instantly recognizes him as a member of the 6 legendary unorthodox masters. One attendee even notes that meeting him was a career goal for any blade master. Meanwhile, Mayoung wears a private smirk, admitting that Yeon-myung's progress is quite impressive, given the young lord has already reached the first stage of transcendence. He jokingly whispers about his arrival with the lord's daughter, Yoonhyu, which has him anticipating some spectacular displays of combat skill today. Seol-yeon then announces that Myung will act as the referee for any lethal matches, stating that anyone seeking a fight to the death requires his authorization. As the festivities commence, numerous warriors signal for approval. Among them, one individual requests Mayoung's permission to challenge Yeon-myung to a fatal duel. This fighter is none other than Chin-hui Mag, the firstborn of Inhu Mag, the previous head of the Tai Yul Black Sword sect. Realizing who Yunhui is, Mayang wonders if revenge is the motive, recalling the hearsay that the Dang clan was responsible for Inhu's demise. Inhu was famous for being one of the most formidable warriors across all sects. However, Kai Inhui steps forward to proclaim that, as the heir to the Tai Yul Black Sword lineage, he seeks to avenge his father's killing by dueling our protagonist. In the meantime, Mirio, standing in the crowd, utters that the Tai Yul Black Sword sect were the original aggressors against the Dang clan, but Yang quickly hushes her. Mayang allows Chenhui to engage in a duel to the death against the protagonist, leading both fighters to step onto the stage. Meanwhile, Yunhui's anticipation grows as she prepares to watch him fight. Though she is aware of his reputation as an unmatched martial artist, she now acknowledges his striking physical appearance. Mayang notices Yunhui's enthusiasm and comments on her high spirits. Yet he understands her letdown will be profound should Yeonmyeong suffer defeat. Mayang declares that participation in this lethal encounter is restricted solely to the combatant's personal staff and protectors. Additionally, all combat techniques are permitted, and fighters may disregard any pleas for mercy. Since neither party protests, Mayang confirms that the duelists can utilize their security detail and aids in the assault. Addressing the main character, he inquires whether he has a guard present. Yeonmyeong confirms he does, though he clarifies that he has no plans for them to get involved. He maintains that the outcome remains unchanged regardless of whether he fights a single foe or a trio. This claim naturally enrages his rivals, though Myeong confesses he admires the young man's boldness. The battle commences as the adversaries unsheath their blades. Following a brief look between them, Kai and Huey's group takes their positions, and a violet glow starts radiating from his weapon. Spectators whisper eagerly as they see the blade's energy. A voice identifies it as the signature technique of the Black Sword sect's head, known as the Black Sword Aura, while another observer notes Kai and Huey's proficiency in the Tai Yul Twin Sword style. Both the protector and the aid of Kai and Huey strike at the protagonist at once, while Kai and Huey stays in the background. He bides his time for a vulnerability to finish off the youth with his dual blades. Nevertheless, the protagonist dispatches both subordinates in the blink of an eye. The crowd watches in shock, puzzled by the sudden fall of both fighters, until cow hair needles are spotted in their necks. Mayang himself struggles to process the scene he just saw. Yeonmyeong then addresses his rival, questioning the delay and telling him to strike quickly before he drifts off to sleep. Seething with anger, Chenhui is desperate to decapitate our protagonist. He launches an assault, only to be shocked when Yeonmyeong suddenly disappears from view as he nears him. Materializing at his back, the hero mentions that two individuals involved in the Dang clan raid possessed an identical sword aura. Those two were a mole and Chenhui's own father. Yet, the protagonist considers Chenhui significantly weaker than either man. Though enraged, Chenhui experiences a feeling of despair, stunned that his journey concludes this way. At the same time, the audience remarks that the duel hasn't even lasted 10 minutes. They are unsure if Yeonmyeong possesses overwhelming power or if Chenhui simply lacks skill. Chenhui soon realizes a needle has hit him, filling him with disgrace. Not because he missed his chance for vengeance, but because he tarnished his father's legacy. Nevertheless, he gathers his energy, causing his blade's aura to darken into a deep black. Wielding his altered blade, Chenhui strikes at the protagonist, intent on showing he has surpassed his father. To the amazement of the onlookers, the hero simply catches the aura-charged weapon with his naked palm and shatters it. The spectators are speechless. Observing from the sidelines, Mirio quips that she is beyond being shocked, while Yang is unable to. Picture Yeonmyeong suffering a defeat now. Observing his fallen adversary, the young man muses that his initial plan was to show Chenhui some mercy. However, he hadn't anticipated his rival would stay upright after exposure to the blue-horned white snake's venom. Surrounded by the stunned onlookers, Mayang cries out that he never imagined seeing the black catching hand style in this place. He clarifies that, based on hearsay, members of the Dang family either utilize gloves or harden their palms to manage lethal concealed armaments. Yet he witnessed our lead character intercepting a blade or sword using nothing but his skin. To himself, Yeonmyeong acknowledges that the dragon scale aura armor is responsible for this feat. Though he has no desire to disclose that secret, choosing instead to dismiss the matter. Mayang subsequently declares that both he and the Heartfire sect acknowledge Yan Mayung's win, leaving the choice of proceeding or withdrawing entirely to him. Our protagonist opts to keep going, yet asks for consent to take on every person in attendance simultaneously. The spectators are struck dumb, while Seolyun's rage intensifies. Yeonmyoung further remarks that the final outcome will remain unchanged regardless. Identical in any case. At this, every fighter in the stadium begins to seethe with anger toward Yeonmyoung. Their pride feels severely bruised, as they are certain such a conceited individual has mocked them by having the audacity to provoke the entire group. Following only one win, they begin labeling him the haughty and insignificant successor of a ruined lineage, vowing to demonstrate to him the identity of the true Saitian combatants. Suddenly, Seolyun moves to the front and quiets the assembly. She points out that the Sashin banquet isn't some chaotic scuffle among hoodlums. Notes that this event serves as a stage for the upcoming martial arts generation to exhibit their prowess and talent on behalf of their school. With a chilling tone, she states that in her capacity as host, she refuses to permit anyone to ignore the regulations and behave however they please. Unexpectedly, Mayung chimes in, questioning Seo-yeon on whether such rigidity is truly necessary. He admits to having a sincere interest in witnessing the true potential of the Dang clan's successor. Despite Seolyun's objections, Mayung quickly interrupts her, thereby noting that he will intervene himself should the situation spiral out of control. She gives in to his choice with hesitation. Later, Mayung ponders the secret projectile methods of the Dang clan, which are particularly effective in large-scale battles. However, he mentions that if hundreds of fighters storm the ring simultaneously, they will merely get in each other's way. He informs our protagonist that they shall restrict how many adversaries he fights at one time, even though he can select them personally. Mayung further grants him the right to voice any desired adjustments. Nevertheless, sporting a self-assured grin, Yeonmyoung composedly remarks that the setup is acceptable. Subsequently, Mayung is left in total shock, starting to wonder if his decision was a mistake. Initially, he assumed that after several bouts, the contestants would develop tactics to neutralize Yan Mayung's fine needle. He felt that once the rivals observed his concealed weaponry style, they might have a shot at winning. Yet within under an hour, our lead has knocked out over 50% of the field. He hasn't employed any skills other than his needle-throwing and sword-trapping methods. Even so, a single opponent did manage to offer some resistance. Mayang is baffled by how the youth grew so formidable, given he never detected such immense inner power before. Consequently, Mayang realizes that the event cannot proceed much further at this pace. In the meantime, the competitors start fleeing in despair, shouting that they give up and want nothing more to do with this gathering. Out of nowhere, a fighter wrapped in linens advances, slamming his foot down to seize the crowd's focus. This shrouded individual proclaims that the Chabung clan is the next to take on our protagonist, mentioning that no outside assistance is required, as his personal sentries are more than sufficient. He asserts that the young lord's individual display concludes now, identifying himself as the Chabung sect's successor, Ki-Gang Yo. Watching from his vantage point, Myung observes that Ki-Gang is the sole person confronting Yeonmyoung while others retreat. He reckons that if anyone can best our lead, it would be the Chabung group. Upon Mayung inquiring if Yeonmyoung has any complaints, he merely gives a negative nod. Internally, our protagonist considers Chingang quite intriguing. Consequently, Mayung signals for the duel to commence. The protagonist hurls his projectiles, yet Chingang parries each one, sending them falling uselessly to the floor. Both Mirio and Yang Yang are shocked that Chingang successfully repelled every strike from our main character. They perceive that Chingang's flesh appears parched and fractured, resembling timber. Mayung remarks that he is employing the ancient tree physique method, a style that dehydrates and contorts the frame while significantly reinforcing skeletal and muscular structures. The remaining uncertainty is how Yeonmyoung will react. At that instant, our fighter utilizes the dark shadow maneuver, evading his foe with such speed that Mayung becomes bewildered, briefly losing sight of him. Additionally, Mayung questions whether the young master has perfected the art of light-footed travel. Following the move, our hero hits a target, driving a needle directly into his brow. The other adversary immediately slides backward, as our protagonist realizes that sufficient power can indeed penetrate this defense. A furious rival then rushes headlong toward Yeonmyoung. However, the youth seizes the man's jaw and shoves his fingers in. Grinning, he questions whether the rival's tongue possesses the same resilience as his body. He then drives a needle into the tongue, causing the adversary to crumple. The young master muses that it's unfortunate it lacked conditioning. Subsequently, the third challenger, Chingang, charges forward and tries to strike him. Baiting the assault, our protagonist retaliates with a move of his own, crashing Chingang onto the floor. Yet, the lad realizes that despite focusing his inner power into the hit, he couldn't penetrate Chingang's defenses. When Chingang counterattacks, the boy seizes his throat in a firm grip. Our lead admits that Chingang possesses great strength, yet wonders if this is the extent of his capability. He asks if Chingang honestly believed victory was possible solely through his physical durability, inquiring if he has anything else to show or if he's ready to be knocked out. Chingang grins and retorts, asking if the boy truly thinks he's seen everything. He discloses that he's been anticipating Yeonmyung's hold. Clasping the protagonist's limb, Chungong proclaims that he's about to demonstrate the genuine might of the ancient tree body style. Chungang remembers his mentor in Yi Yob, head of the Chabung clan, instructing him in the style's concealed art, cautioning that it must be kept hidden from public view. His teacher commanded that should he ever employ it, he must finish his foe entirely. Back in the moment, Xinjiang scowls, certain that this is the ideal time to utilize that move. That he starts activating the concealed art, the energy siphoning method. Xinjiang declares he'll deplete every bit of the hero's inner chi, leaving him to shrivel and perish. However, our lead sighs, stating he would never do so if he were in Xinjiang's shoes.